Chapter 203. Cannon Dragon's body trembled violently. Fresh blood spurted out from his severed left arm. It was not only the blood that flowed out from his broken meridians, but it was also the clotted blood that had accumulated there. Ji Dong immediately forced all the impurities and clotted blood out. The meridians on Cannon Dragon's severed arm were reopened. Cannon Dragon's right hand, which was placed on his knee, turned into an eagle's claw and gripped his knee tightly. Clenching his teeth, one could clearly see the muscles on his cheeks bulging and the veins on his forehead bulging. It was obvious that he was enduring great pain. However, this man who was over 40 years old did not even let out a groan. Cannon Dragon was in great pain. Ji Dong had fully mobilized his mana. The clotted meridians were instantly cut open. The huge amount of mana that had accumulated in Cannon Dragon's body seemed to have found an outlet. Even though it was suppressed by Ji Dong's attributes, it still charged toward Cannon Dragon with all its might. The pure mana blocked the impact of Cannon Dragon's mana. At the same time, the mana that Ji Dong had placed in Ah Bing's body was completely released to prevent any problems from happening to his meridians. Opening his eyes, Ji Dong's gaze suddenly became extremely sharp. A strand of the throbbing white flame between his eyebrows suddenly separated and floated away, landing on the wound on Cannon Dragon's left shoulder like a strand of silk. A series of sizzling sounds were heard. As the white light flickered, the wound on Cannon Dragon's shoulder was completely sealed. At that moment, Cannon Dragon could not see that the white light that was injected into the wound on his left shoulder had turned into countless white threads that were sewing up his broken meridians. As the meridians that were initially blocked were reconnected, the magical white light only flashed gently. Not even a scar was left behind. This was chaos. The true power of chaos, creation. Chaos created the world, not destroyed it. Using the flame of chaos to reconnect the meridians was the important reason why Flaming Bar mentioned that Ji Dong could help Cannon Dragon heal the wound on his meridians in an instant so that he would not lose too much blood. At this moment, Ji Dong's mental power had already been pushed to the limit. The meridians of the human body were extremely complicated. His soul flame rose with all its might, allowing him to control every strand of mental power, allowing the chaotic flame to cleverly integrate the meridians. After all the meridians were unblocked, the Cannon Dragon's left shoulder had also formed a knot on its own. However, Ji Dong had yet to let go of the Cannon Dragon's mana. After all, the meridians here had just been connected. Although there was the flame of chaos to help it heal, it was not solid enough. After dealing with the left shoulder, next was the left eye. The meridians in the eye were even more complicated, and they were more sensitive to pain. Cannon Dragon was indeed powerful. When Ji Dong broke open the meridians in his eye, his whole body trembled violently because of the pain. His clothes were soaked in sweat, but he still did not make a sound. Because he had used too much force, his gums had begun to bleed. In order to reduce Cannon Dragon's pain, Ji Dong completed the same treatment on his left eye as quickly as possible. When all the meridians were unblocked, although Cannon Dragon lost his left arm and left eye, the meridians in his body could already circulate again. Slowly withdrawing the chaotic flame, Ji Dong's chest kept rising and falling. His clothes were also soaked in sweat. The huge consumption of mental power could not help but make his head a little dizzy. "Brother Cannon Dragon, open your mouth!" Ji Dong shouted in a deep voice. Cannon Dragon's body stiffened for a moment. To Ji Dong's puzzlement, Cannon Dragon actually shook his head. Ji Dong continued to press one hand on Cannon Dragon's back, controlling the mana he injected into Cannon Dragon. He turned his head to look at Cannon Dragon. When he saw the look on Cannon Dragon's face, he could not help but be surprised and admire him. It was not that Cannon Dragon did not want to open his mouth, but he could not do it now. Because he clenched his teeth too hard, the muscles around his teeth were all stiff and could not be opened at all. The bulging muscles on his cheeks were like two hills as hard as iron. 2 gentle mana were injected into Cannon Dragon's cheeks from Ji-dong's hands, softening the muscles on his cheeks. Ji-dong squeezed his hands, and Cannon Dragon's mouth finally opened. The blue gourd was thrown out, and the gourd stopper was directly shaken off by Ji-dong, and a blue liquid shot out. Under the control of his mana, it condensed into a small blue ball and fell directly into Cannon Dragon's mouth. It turned into a clear spring and flowed into Cannon Dragon's body. It was the source of life. With the help of Ji-dong's mana, the huge vitality of the source of life swept through every meridian in Cannon Dragon's body almost instantly. The new wounds on his left eye and left arm healed completely at a speed visible to the naked eye. The scabs fell off, revealing the tender flesh. At the same time, Cannon Dragon's broken meridians also regained their vitality and elasticity under the effect of this huge vitality. They began to become more and more tenacious, and even absorbed a little of the mana that Ji-dong injected. At this moment, it gave Ji-dong the feeling that Cannon Dragon's body seemed to be rejuvenated. This was something that Ji-dong did not expect. He gave the remaining half of the bottle of Source of Life in the gourd to the Cannon Dragon to drink. The effect was better than he had expected. In this way, the barrier that Flaming Bar said that Cannon Dragon might not be able to break through to the supreme powerhouse should no longer exist. After all, under the nourishment of the Source of Life, his reconnected meridians had become a perfect whole. The next thing was much simpler. With his powerful mana, Ji-dong melted all the solid mana in Cannon Dragon's body and urged the mana to circulate in Cannon Dragon's body. Then, he communicated with Cannon Dragon's source of magic and entered the normal cultivation state of a magic master. When his mana was withdrawn from Cannon Dragon's body, Cannon Dragon had already entered a stable cultivation state. This time, not only were his meridians cleared by Ji-dong, but the mana that he had accumulated over the years was not wasted at all. His meridians were even tougher than before he was injured. The replenishment of the life force had also healed all the old injuries caused by his broken limbs. It could be said that he had been reborn. Ji-dong jumped off the bed gently without disturbing the Cannon Dragon. He knew that when Cannon Dragon woke up from his cultivation, not only would his injuries be healed, his strength would also improve greatly. He wiped the sweat off his forehead with his sleeve. Although he was exhausted, he was in a good mood. The comfortable feeling seemed to have made his soul fire more clear. The whole healing process only lasted for an hour. It seemed to be completed very easily, but in fact, the number of people in the world who could heal such an injury without causing any harm to Cannon Dragon Bing could be counted on one hand. If the source of life could be found, then the flame of chaos, which was of the same origin as Bing, could only be found by chance. Even the fire mythical beast Vermilion Bird did not have such an ability. The source of life could only help Bing strengthen his meridians and extend his lifespan at most. It was only a temporary solution. Only the flame of chaos could completely solve his problem. The 2 fire elementals were separated from Ji-dong. He did not recall them. Instead, he attached them to his body and left them in the room to protect Cannon Dragon Bing. Only then did Ji-dong quietly open the door and leave. Even without the support of his mana, it was not a problem for these 2 elementals to last for 24 hours. It was enough to protect the Cannon Dragon. When he returned to the hall, the Flaming Bar and Jean were still sitting there. They had already finished their food and were drinking ale while waiting for him. Seeing that Ji-dong was drenched in sweat, the Flaming Bar could not help but frown slightly. She stood up and greeted him. As soon as she stood up, Jean immediately stood up and followed behind her. Did it take a lot of energy? Ji-dong smiled and shook his head. Cannon Dragon brother is fine now. Let's go and find a place to stay. I can wash up and change my clothes. He had traveled in the morning and healed the Cannon Dragon in the afternoon. He had consumed a lot of energy and needed to find a place to rest. The reason why he decided to leave without waiting for the cannon dragon to wake up was that he did not want the cannon dragon to be too grateful to him. He still had a lot of things to do. With the cannon dragon's enthusiasm, he would be very excited to have his body regain the ability to cultivate. He would definitely make Ji Dong stay and not let him leave easily. Fortunately, he would leave after healing. With the protection of the dual fire elementals, the cannon dragon Ah Bing would not be in any danger. After exhaling a mouthful of incense, Ji Dong saw a hotel called Zhuke at a glance, not far away, also on Binghua Avenue. Let's stay there. His body was sticky and uncomfortable. More importantly, as soon as he took a breath of incense, Ah Jin, who was dressed in golden armor, attracted the attention of a large number of pedestrians. Coupled with the invisible temperament that the flaming bar exuded, it was too eye-catching. Only by staying there could he find a way for Ah Jin to change his clothes. The flaming bar naturally had no objection to Ji Dong's proposal. The three of them walked into the 5-story Vermilion Bird Hotel together. When they came to the front desk, when the service staff asked Ji Dong how many rooms he wanted, he could not help but feel a little embarrassed. If they wanted 2 rooms, one for him and one for the flaming bar and Ah Jin, this should be the most reasonable. However, no matter how strong Ah Jin was, Ji Dong would never feel that she was safer around the flaming bar than he was around the flaming bar. Moreover, Ah Jin had lost her previous memory. Of course, he had to be on guard against her. How could he be at ease to let the flaming bar and her stay in the same room? After thinking about it, he said something that left the waiter dumbfounded. "Give me the best room you have here, the kind with a king-sized bed." Hearing Ji Dong's words, the flaming bar did not think much of it. Ah Jin also had no objection because she had lost her memory. However, it was different for the service staff. The service staff was a young girl, about 18 or 19 years old. When she heard Ji Dong's words, her face immediately turned red. She mumbled, "Is it really only 1 room?" Ji Dong immediately knew that she was mistaken. Even though Ajin was wearing a suit of golden armor, her armor was also in the style of a woman's. It would be strange if a man didn't misunderstand when he brought 2 women with him to only 1 room. Yes, only 1 room. Hurry up. Ji Dong was soaked in sweat and felt very uncomfortable. He said impatiently, "Okay, please wait for a moment." The room was the best, top-notch suite on the 5th floor. Ji Dong took the key and left with the flaming bar and Ah Jin. The service staff looked at their backs and mumbled, "A man with 2 women, and they all look so outstanding. Is society so bad now?" Not far away, another service staff who had been peeking at them came over. She giggled and said, "This is what you don't know. This is called a threesome. Many aristocrats like it. However, that man doesn't look like an aristocrat. Is he pretending to be weak?" "A threesome? You really dare to say that? It's so embarrassing. What's there to be shy about? Although that man looks ordinary, he has a good figure. I think he's very good in that area. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to handle 2 women." Ji Dong quickly went upstairs with the flaming bar and Ah Jin. Fortunately, he did not hear the conversation between the 2 service staff. Otherwise, if he heard someone talking about a threesome, he would probably be furious. What was the position of the flaming bar in his heart? Not to mention a threesome, even a solo flight was his dream, of course. He was just thinking about it, it was worthy of being the most luxurious top-notch suite. The room was very large, and there was a 1,270-degree curved crystal glass facing Binghua Avenue. From the outside, one could not see the inside of the window, but standing in front of the window and looking out from the inside, one could almost see the entire Binghua Avenue. The suite had 2 rooms, both about 100 square meters. The outside was the living room, and the inside was the bedroom. As expected, there was a big bed. It was so big that it was even exaggerated, and it was round. Just looking at it made people want to throw themselves on it. Ji Dong rushed directly into the bathroom, took a hot shower, and changed into clean clothes before coming out. When he walked out of the bathroom, he saw the flaming bar standing in front of the 270-degree floor-to-ceiling glass window looking out. She had already taken off her bamboo hat, and her big wavy red hair draped down her back. Coupled with her perfect figure, under the sunlight outside the window, she looked like a perfect statue carved from rubies. Jean was still wearing that golden armor, standing quietly next to the flaming bar. This beautiful scene seemed to be fixed in time, and Ji Dong could not bear to destroy it. The Earth's core will never be so prosperous. The human world is really much, much more beautiful. The flaming bar sighed softly. Ji Dong walked to her side and looked out as well. The bustling scene of the Central Plains city was indeed a shocking sight to behold from this height. The flaming bar, Ji Dong called softly. The flaming bar turned her head to look at Hyoheim, and a faint smile appeared on her pretty face. Under the sunlight, her smile looked so beautiful. It was almost evening, and the afterglow of the setting sun and the moving sunset were overshadowed by her smile. Ji Dong, do you know? It feels so good to walk outside with you. Ji Dong said somewhat impulsively, if you are willing, I hope to continue walking with you like this, to walk to every corner of the continent, to see all the beauty. If that's the case, that would be the best. The smile of the flaming bar was like that of a pure child, so clear and pure. Chapter 204. Ji Dong, how are we going to sleep tonight? Lai Yen asked softly. Her pretty face even blushed. Looking at her slightly bashful look, Ji Dong felt his nose heat up, and he almost spat out blood. This was not because his resistance was low. If it was any other man in the same situation, they would not be better than him. This, looking at the big bed in the inner room, Ji Dong was a little embarrassed. Previously, when he and Raging Flame were at the forest demon's place, they didn't feel much. After all, the treehouse on the forest demon's side didn't have any furniture. At night, the two of them would just meditate for a night. However, this was a hotel. It was completely different from the forest demon's treehouse. The seductive big bed, the quiet and comfortable atmosphere in the room, and the perfect flaming bar beside him. If Ji Dong said that he did not have any subconscious thoughts, he would not be a man. However, his rationality still won over his desire. Ji Dong said tentatively, let Jean cultivate in the living room outside. We'll be in the bedroom. Ji Dong, you. The flaming bar's face blushed like a ripe red apple. Ji Dong had the urge to take a bite of her delicate skin. He knew that the flaming bar might have misunderstood him. Flaming bar. Don't misunderstand. I mean, let Jean meditate and cultivate outside. I'll meditate with you in the bedroom. The flaming bar finally relaxed. However, when she thought of what she had thought earlier, the blush on her pretty face did not fade away. She realized that she was becoming more and more like a human woman. The flaming bar did not speak, but Jean said, no, I'll stay inside with Master. You stay outside. Ji Dong frowned. It's not up to you to decide. Jean snorted coldly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. She said, men are all bad. Ji Dong asked curiously, didn't you lose your memory? How do you know that men aren't good? Jean said coldly, there's nothing good about men. Ji Dong was speechless. The flaming bar smiled. Jean, if you want to acknowledge the person who saved you as your master, it shouldn't be me, it should be Ji Dong. He was the one who brought you out of the holy evil island and brought you to the core world. If it wasn't for him, you would still be frozen on the holy evil island. Who knows how long it would take for you to recover? Jean shook his head. No, I only recognize you as my master. Even if he saved me, he is not qualified to be my master. Who wants to be your master? Since you've acknowledged the flaming bar as your master, there's no reason for you to make decisions for her. How you sleep at night should be decided by the flaming bar. Hearing Ji Dong's words, Jean seemed to be angered. She suddenly took a step forward. She was at least 3 meters away from Ji Dong, but this seemingly small step had already brought her in front of Ji Dong. The moment Ah Jin took a step forward, Ji Dong felt an unparalleled chill envelop him. His skin was even trembling from the cold. It wasn't true coldness, but a monstrous killing intent. Ji Dong had never seen anyone who could exude such a strong killing intent. At this moment, the golden-armored Ah Jin was like the sun, emitting a dazzling golden light. This time, Ji Dong was facing Ah Jin himself. He finally saw how Ah Jin attacked. Her weapon was her hand. The golden-armored right hand suddenly lifted up. In an instant, a dazzling golden light erupted from her hand. That golden light transformed into thousands of golden rays in the air. They were actually golden spikes that were completely condensed from ultimate metal demonic power. However, they were like solid, indestructible spikes that could pierce through anything. Yang metal was the most penetrative and destructive demonic power, while metal was the sharpest and ever-changing demonic power. There was no doubt that among the 5 elements, the metal element was the most aggressive, and Ah Jin had displayed this point perfectly. Amidst the sudden burst of sharp aura and powerful killing intent, Ah Jin's simple and direct attack was filled with an extremely fierce aura. The entire attack, killing intent, and aura had completely merged into one. It was like the sharpest sword stabbing Hyoheim. Ji Dong's battle experience was extremely rich, but it was his first time encountering an opponent like Ah Jin, who had completely combined her aura with her technique. Ah Jin's battle technique could be said to be the most powerful person he had ever seen. Even supreme experts like Yin Zhaoyang and Yin Zhaorong seemed to not be as good as Ah Jin in this aspect. A bright golden Yin crown suddenly appeared above Ah Jin's head. Like Ji Dong, she also had 6 crowns and 3 stars, which represented her strength at level 66. However, Ah Jin, who was only level 66, gave Ji Dong a feeling that she was even more terrifying than the 7-crown demon masters he had faced before. It was as if she was born to kill. In the face of such powerful pressure, Ji Dong's condition was instantly raised to its peak. This was the benefit of the fire of the soul. After the fire of chaos and his soul were connected, all of Ji Dong's mana would be mobilized by the fire of the soul. His reaction speed was at least twice as fast as before. The fire of the soul was the perfect combination of mana and mental strength. The greater the pressure, the more potential it could stimulate, and all of Ji Dong's abilities would be completely unleashed. Facing Ah Jin's attack, which was filled with boundless killing intent, Ji Dong's response was a punch. He did not have time to gather his aura, and could only mobilize his mana in an instant. His punch did not look fancy, and there was not even a hint of mana. However, the black and white yin-yang crown had already appeared above his head. It was a simple and direct punch. It was not even Devourer of the Sun, nor was it a skill. It was just a straight punch. Because Ah Jin's movements were too fast, Ji Dong did not have time to step forward and use Devourer of the Sun. But after this punch, Ah Jin's extremely fast attack, which was filled with terrifying killing intent, paused in midair. Thousands of golden thorns fused into one, and like lightning, they poked Ji Dong's fist 7 times. The 2 of them grunted at the same time. Ji Dong's shoulders swayed, and white halos appeared on his fist. Ah Jin stumbled back 3 steps before she managed to stabilize herself. At that moment, Ji Dong's heart was filled with surprise. That seemingly simple punch had finally allowed him to achieve a breakthrough in his ability. It was not a breakthrough in mana, but a breakthrough in mana control. It was also a breakthrough that he had always dreamed of. Even if fire countered metal, Ah Jin still had extreme mana. Furthermore, her attack had come without any warning, and she had the upper hand. Her mana level was also 4 levels higher than Ji Dong's. Coupled with her powerful attack techniques, she had fused her aura and skills into one. Logically speaking, Ji Dong should not have been able to block this instantaneous attack if he was unprepared. However, Ji Dong had used that light punch to block it, and he had even gained the upper hand. The secret behind this was control. That simple punch of Ji-dong's was a punch that he had subconsciously launched when Jin had completely suppressed him. But it was also this punch that had opened a new door for him. The punch that did not release any mana did not contain just one type of mana. Instead, it contained two types of mana from the ultimate dual fire. The two types of mana fused together in the form of a yin and yang fish, and it was filled with the release of two extreme attributes. In the mana in Ji-dong's body, the perfect fusion of the two extreme attributes would produce the neutral and peaceful aura of the chaotic fire. But when he had launched that punch just now, Ji-dong had withdrawn the chaotic fire that had mediated between them. Thus, his punch was filled with all the characteristics of the two extreme flames. To put it simply, this punch was like a combination technique that had been formed in his body, and then blasted out through the method of compressing mana into a single point with the god-killing strike. Ji-dong did not know how Jin had figured it out, but there was no doubt that he had the upper hand in this punch. Although he had launched the punch later, he had blocked Jin's attack first. This control of mana allowed him to greatly shorten the distance between him and Jin in terms of technique. The spikes formed by Jin's mana hit Ji-dong's fist 7 times. They exploded 7 times and melted in the air. The mana of the ultimate yin gold was directly melted and then melted after the explosion. It was clear how terrifying the power of Ji-dong's punch was. However, she was also the first person to block the god-killing strike. Of course, this was also because Ji-dong's punch did not land on her. After being knocked back by Ji-dong's punch, Jin's blue eyes were filled with disbelief, but she was even more unconvinced. In her opinion, Ji-dong should not be her opponent at all. However, things did not go as she wished. Ji-dong had knocked her back even though he had launched the punch later. Jin. Ji-dong and Jin's contact this time was too fast, so much so that when the two of them suddenly separated, Raging Flame's voice was heard. The flaming bar's call contained an emotion that Ji-dong had never felt from her before. That was coldness. Jin turned around to look at the flaming bar. She saw that the flaming bar's eyes were filled with an indescribable pressure. Those originally bright and beautiful eyes were like two bottomless abysses in Jin's eyes. They were filled with an aura that made her soul tremble. Even though the flaming bar's gaze was directed at Jin, Ji-dong could also feel how terrifying the flaming bar was at the moment. Just by feeling the aftershock of her gaze, Ji-dong felt as if his soul had stopped burning. Ji-dong had never seen the flaming bar display her true strength. At this moment, he deeply felt how great the difference between him and the flaming bar was. The flaming bar clearly did not release any demonic power, but just that gaze was enough to make him and Jin, who were 6 crowned heaven warriors with extreme demonic power, unable to even think of resisting. With a plop, Jin had already knelt on one knee. Her eyes were filled with pain. Due to the obstruction of her armor, Ji-dong could not see that Jin was currently drenched in sweat. Her face was filled with struggle. Jin, remember, no matter when, do not cross my bottom line. This is the first time you've touched Hyoheim, and it will also be the last time. If there is a next time, I can revive you, or I can destroy you at any time. Even your soul will not be left. Jin could not answer at all. Under the flaming bar's gaze, she did not even have the ability to open her mouth. She could only grit her teeth and endure the incomparable pain. The flaming bar's gaze finally returned to normal. All of the pressure was swept away. Jin panted heavily as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. She was now kneeling on both knees. The arrogance in her clear blue eyes was gone. She could no longer think of resisting the pressure on her soul. There was only submission left in her mind towards the flaming bar. She lowered her head and did not dare to look at the flaming bar again. The flaming bar said calmly, "Go take a shower, then change your clothes and take off your armor. You will sleep in the outer room tonight." With that, she took out a set of cloth clothes from somewhere and threw them in front of Jin. Then, she turned and walked into the bedroom inside. The door was not closed. It was clearly left for Ji-dong. Yes. Jin's voice was still as cold, but it was now trembling in fear. Her panting eased a little. She forced herself to stand up and dashed into the washroom as if she was escaping. She did not even look at Ji-dong. If Jin was said to be a battle ticket of fear, then Ji-dong was shocked. He never thought that the flaming bar would still be so powerful even if she did not release any of her mana. He could not even imagine what kind of power the flaming bar had now. Even the vermilion bird and the flying serpent respected her so much. Could it be that she was at the level of a demigod like the holy beast? That was probably the case. However, why could she not release her mana in the human world? These questions had always been in Ji-dong's mind, but he had never asked the flaming bar about it. It was not that he did not want to ask, but he was not willing to pry into the flaming bar's privacy. If the flaming bar wanted him to know, she would have told him sooner or later. Following the flaming bar into the room, Ji-dong saw the long hair standing beside the flaming bar's bed. He could not help but say, "Flaming bar, although Jin has a bad temper, I can see that she still respects you very much. Don't be angry." The flaming bar turned around. Her expression had completely returned to normal. She looked at Ji-dong calmly and said, "I'm not angry, Ji-dong. Whether it's Jin, who has acknowledged me as her master, or anyone else, when someone threatens your life, they will only be my enemy. An enemy means destruction because you are my bottom line. You are my bottom line." These 6 simple words set off huge waves in Ji-dong's heart. He never thought that the flaming bar would say such a thing. It was this simple sentence that made him feel that even if he died the next moment, it would be worth it. Chapter 205. Looking at Ji-dong, the flaming bar's emotions seemed to have changed. "Do you know, Ji-dong, when you were facing a strong enemy on the wholly evil battlefield 4 years ago, I was filled with conflicting emotions. I didn't know if I should save you, because if I used my ability in the human world, I would have to pay a huge price. I was hesitating, I was perturbed, and just when I made up my mind, your senior brother Fury appeared and saved you from the enemy. It was also at that time that I truly felt pain, an indescribable pain. It was the first time I felt pain since I gained consciousness. I don't know what kind of feeling it was, but when I thought that you might die, I was filled with fear. That was the first time I felt fear. I don't know what this feeling is, but when I thought that you might die, my heart was filled with fear. That was the first time I experienced fear. You might not be able to imagine what it meant to me, but I swore at that time that I would never let this happen again. I didn't want to experience the fear of losing you again. In fact, I always knew how you felt about me. Every glass of wine you made for me contained the changes in your emotions. We've known each other for almost 10 years, and in these 10 years, your attitude towards me has never changed. I felt guilty for my hesitation at that time, because I clearly knew that if you and I were in your shoes, you would come to my side without hesitation to defend me against powerful enemies. It was also at that time that I finally made up my mind. If the same thing happened again, I would stand before you without hesitation." Hearing the flaming bar's words, Ji-dong was completely stunned. He had never thought that he would have such a position in the flaming bar's heart. For the first time, he truly felt that the flaming bar had human emotions, a woman's emotions. "No, flaming bar, please don't be like this, I don't want you to be like this." Ji-dong's voice trembled uncontrollably. "You are the goddess in my heart, I never want you to be hurt, especially because of me. I'm just a human, I know that your life is almost limitless, no matter how hard I try, I can only live for 200 or 300 years at most. One day, I will leave your side. Yes, I've always had a dream that we could be together, but I've always been afraid of profaning you, and I didn't dare to think too much about it, because I'm afraid that if I die one day you will be sad because of me. I'm really afraid that you will be sad." "Stop talking." The flaming bar suddenly interrupted Ji-dong's words. She threw herself into Ji-dong's arms, hugging his waist tightly. "Don't talk about death, I won't let you die, I will never let you die, I want you to be like me, immortal. Although I'm not ready to accept your feelings, if I really have such feelings, you are my only choice. Your life is my bottom line, don't ever mention death in front of me." Even when they were dancing together, Ji Dong had only hugged her waist. This was their first real hug, and it was the flaming bar who took the initiative to hug him. At this moment, Ji Dong's mind had already gone blank. He held the flaming bar tightly in his arms, their bodies were completely pressed together, allowing him to fully feel the elasticity of the flaming bar's delicate body and the endless wonderful feeling. "This made me feel another emotion that only you humans have, jealousy, so I decided that I would come to the human world with you and never be separated from you again. I don't like to see you with other women, maybe I'm too selfish, even if I'm not ready to accept your feelings, I don't want you to fall in love with someone else, even though I know that it's almost impossible. Ji Dong, promise me, live well, cultivate well, and with the fire of chaos, you already have the possibility of eternal life." Ji Dong looked at Ji Dong and said, "When you were seriously injured, Lan Bauer had been taking care of you, and I was paying attention to your physical condition every day. When you needed to take care of the most, it wasn't me by your side, which made me feel another emotion that only you humans have, and that is jealousy. I promise, I promise." Ji Dong gently inhaled the faint fragrance of the flaming bar's hair, feeling the excitement that she had never felt before. At this moment, there was only endless passion in his heart. It had been almost 10 years, and he finally felt that everything he had done was paid off. It turned out that she had always been able to feel his feelings. What else was there to say? "Flaming bar, before you're truly prepared, I won't force you at all. I will wait for you, for your entire life, for this life, for all eternity, there will only be you in my heart. No other woman will be able to occupy even a small corner of my heart. I'm really happy, I never thought that there would be a day when you would say such words to me. I'm already satisfied, as long as I can see you every day, that's my greatest satisfaction. I won't force anything else, I won't ask for anything else." Flaming Bar did not speak again. In Ji Dong's embrace, she felt a sense of security and comfort that she had never felt before. Even though Ji Dong's strength could not be compared to hers, she was filled with a sense of security. What she did not tell Ji Dong was that she was actually working hard to become more like a human. This was the preparation that she was talking about. In her heart, she had already made up her mind. One day, when she was really no different from a human and was familiar with everything about humans, she would love him, and be with him forever, just like a human woman. Ji Dong had always been working hard to cultivate for the sake of raging flames, and he had been constantly contributing. However, ever since he had recognized the feelings in his heart, raging flames had also been silently contributing for him. For him, she had followed him to the human world outside, where magic could not be used. For him, she was working hard to accept everything in the human world, because she knew that if she and he were really together, then it would be impossible for them to live forever in that boring place in the core of the earth. She also hoped that he would be happy. The two of them hugged and enjoyed this wonderful feeling. Surprisingly, Ji Dong did not have any impulses of desire at this time, as if his physiology also felt that doing so would destroy this pure emotional fluctuation at this time. The sky outside gradually darkened. The afterglow of the setting sun shyly disappeared into the darkness. After some time, Flaming Bar softly whispered into Ji Dong's ear, "How much longer do you want to hug? Haven't you hugged enough?" Ji Dong answered honestly, "I haven't hugged enough. I'll never have enough." Flaming Bar shyly moved in his arms and said, "Let go of me, you greedy bastard." Ji Dong reluctantly let go. He lowered his head to look at Flaming Bar's delicate face and resisted the urge to kiss her. Ji Dong suddenly felt something and turned to look at the door. He was stunned when he saw the entrance to the bedroom. There was a person standing there quietly, as if she had been standing there for a long time. She was dressed in a plain dress without any decoration or makeup. However, the person standing at the door could make Ji-dong, who had just let go of Flaming Bar, stunned. This proved a lot. Her long blonde hair was loose on her back. Just like Flaming Bar's red hair, it was also wavy. However, it was slightly shorter than Flaming Bar's long hair. Her height was similar to Flaming Bar's as well. Her hot figure was even more exaggerated than Flaming Bar's, especially the amazing curves of her breasts and buttocks. It was full of strong temptation, and was not inferior to Dark Emu Saint Scorpion at all. However, such a figure was filled with a sense of coordinated power. Her hot figure was matched with a cold face. She had an oval face, thin eyebrows, blue eyes, and a nose bridge that was higher than most people's. If Ji-dong had to describe her, he would give her a word: unparalleled beauty. That's right, unparalleled beauty. In Ji-dong's heart, Flaming Bar was a goddess who was incomparably perfect. However, the woman in front of him could be said to be second only to god-level perfection. Among the women that Ji-dong had seen, in terms of figure and appearance, she could definitely be ranked second only to Flaming Bar. She was even better than Scorpion and Lan Bao. Needless to say, this unparalleled beauty with blonde hair and blue eyes was Ajin, who was covered in the golden armor. She had been standing there for a long time, but she did not make a sound. Ji-dong could not help but feel a little embarrassed when Ajin heard his complaint to Flaming Bar. He smiled bitterly and said, "Another one who has to wear a bamboo hat." Even though Ajin wasn't as perfect as Raging Flames, if she were to walk outside, she would still be the focus of attention. Seeing Ajin's appearance, Flaming Bar was not surprised, as if she had seen her before. Although Ji-dong was stunned by Ajin's unparalleled beauty, he soon recovered and looked back at Flaming Bar. She could not help but show a knowing smile and said to Ajin, "Help us close the door. You should also rest early. Your body has just recovered and you still need to rest." "Yes," Ajin answered respectfully and closed the bedroom door. Without Ajin's gaze, Ji-dong immediately felt much more relaxed. After coming to this world, this could be said to be the happiest moment for him. There was an uncontrollable smile on his face. Looking at him, Flaming Bar's pretty face blushed and she said angrily, "Stop looking. You must be tired these few days. Hurry up and rest." Ji-dong lowered his voice and said, "Then are we going to meditate and cultivate or sleep?" As he spoke, he could not help but glance at the big round bed. "Ji-dong." Flaming Bar looked at him with an unfriendly expression. Ji-dong hurriedly explained, "Flaming Bar, don't misunderstand. Listen to me. What I mean is, look at how big this bed is. We can totally sleep on one side each. We're so far away and we won't bump into each other. This bed looks good. It would be a pity if we don't sleep on it, right?" Flaming Bar was stunned for a moment. She looked at Ji-dong in confusion and said, "Do you have other intentions?" Ji-dong said righteously, "Of course not. How could I offend you before you really accept me?" Flaming Bar harumphed and said, "You don't have any other intentions at all? Your eyes are telling me that you're not being honest." Ji-dong smiled bitterly and said, "Flaming Bar, human women are not that smart. Actually, I was just secretly thinking about how wonderful it would be if I could hug you to sleep on this big round bed. Of course, it would just be purely hugging you." As he spoke, he secretly looked at Flaming Bar's expression with a hint of hope and anxiety. Flaming Bar's red lips pouted slightly. She looked at Ji-dong with dissatisfaction and ignored him. She turned around and walked to the inside of the round bed. She took off her shoes and laid down on the side, covering herself with a corner of the round blanket. She did not say anything. Did she agree now? Or did she reject? Ji-dong stood by the bed and did not move for a long time. His heart was racing. It was impossible to say that he was not tempted. How he wished that he could hug Flaming Bar to sleep for a night. He really did not have any other intentions. He just wanted to hug her like before. However, without Flaming Bar's direct permission, he did not dare to do so. He did not want the progress that he had made with Flaming Bar to be ruined because of his recklessness. He was already very satisfied that he could hug Flaming Bar today. He climbed up from the other side of the round bed. The soft mattress was very comfortable to lie on. The clean and faint fragrance gave him a good impression. There was only one blanket on the bed. Even though it was very big, and if both of them slept on one side, it would be impossible for them to touch each other. However, they were in the same bed after all. Even with Ji Dong's personality, he could not help but fantasize about it. Tiredness gradually washed over him. The tiredness of the day was gradually released on this big, comfortable bed. His gaze was fixed on Flaming Bar's back. With a heart full of satisfaction, he gradually fell asleep. With her back facing Ji Dong, Flaming Bar's eyes were open the whole time. She did not need to use her eyes to know what Ji Dong was doing. When Ji Dong climbed onto the bed quietly, she was a little nervous. She was a little afraid that Ji Dong would come over, but she also missed his warm and generous embrace. Even breathing sounds came from the other side of the bed. Flaming Bar slowly turned around. Looking at Ji Dong's satisfied sleeping face, the softest part of her heart was constantly touched. Of course, she could feel how much Ji Dong desired to hug her to sleep. However, he did not do it in the end. He cherished her so much. The softness in her heart melted in this tranquility. Flaming Bar got up gently without making a sound. She quietly held one of Ji Dong's hands and leaned into his embrace. Then, she placed Ji Dong's hand on her waist. Her delicate body slightly curled up and nestled in his embrace. With a faint smile and faint satisfaction, she closed her eyes. After a while, the same even breathing sounds could be heard. Chapter 206. Early in the morning, when Ji Dong woke up, he found that he was the only one on the bed, and the bedroom door was closed. Where was the Flaming Bar? With a jolt in his heart, Ji Dong shouted, "Flaming Bar!" He jumped up from the bed and opened the door. When he saw that the Flaming Bar and Ah Jin were sitting on the sofa in the living room eating breakfast, he was relieved. When the two women saw Ji Dong suddenly open the door, they were also stunned for a moment, and their eyes naturally focused on him. The next moment they had different strange reactions. Ah Jin turned her head and looked out of the window, but the milk in her hand spilled a little, while the Flaming Bar snorted softly and lowered her head with a blush. Seeing their reactions, Ji Dong couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. He looked down subconsciously and was immediately embarrassed. Although he didn't take off his clothes last night because he was afraid that the Flaming Bar would be shy, he had just woken up from his sleep, and it was early in the morning. A man's most normal reaction in the morning was to set up a tent without hesitation. Moreover, the tent was very high. Such a situation was seen by the two women, and the light was shining in front of them in an instant. It would be strange if they could be natural. I'm sorry. Ji Dong screamed and quickly closed the door, saving himself the trouble of going back to the room. The Flaming Bar bit her lower lip with her teeth and murmured, "This bad guy." Last night, she also slept very well. Originally, she wouldn't have woken up so early, but when the sky just brightened, she felt something hard against her butt, which was very uncomfortable. When she woke up, she found the sinful little tent. She was immediately embarrassed and quickly got up, not letting Ji Dong know who she was in his arms last night. After all, Ji Dong slept very deeply because he was tired and relaxed. But she didn't expect that when Ji Dong woke up in the morning and saw her, he rushed out immediately. As a result, the sinful little tent appeared in front of the Flaming Bar again. How could she not be embarrassed and shy? Although the Flaming Bar didn't know what was in the little tent, she could vaguely guess that the most intimate contact between men and women was very important. Ji Dong's embarrassment was no less than the Flaming Bar's. When he returned to the bedroom, he wanted to find a hole to hide in. It was too embarrassing. After a while, he finally calmed down and opened the door again. He saw that the Flaming Bar was still sitting on the sofa, while Ah Jin was standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling window and looking outside. Ji Dong and the flaming bar looked at each other, and the flaming bar's pretty face blushed again. She said unhappily, "Hurry up and eat something." Ji Dong felt as if he had been pardoned. He rushed into the bathroom and did a simple wash. He returned to the living room for breakfast. At this moment, his mood gradually calmed down. What happened yesterday made him feel as if he had eaten honey. It could be said that the relationship between him and the flaming bar had changed substantially since last night. Although they hadn't really broken through that layer of paper, the two of them were becoming more and more like a couple and not more like a master and disciple like before. "Do you have any plans today?" the flaming bar asked when she saw that Ji Dong had finished eating. Ji Dong thought for a moment and said, "We have to return to the Forest of Life as soon as possible. The Golden Eagle Chamber of Commerce suffered a great loss there, and I'm afraid they won't let it go easily. If they make a move again, the Forest Demon Tribe will be finished. So I have to settle the matters in Central Plain City today, and then rush back to the Earth Spirit Mountain Range to ask Aunt Vermilion Bird about the results. If everything goes smoothly, we can return to the Forest of Life tomorrow." The flaming bar nodded and said, "Then go. I won't be going with you today. Ah Jin and I will return to the Earth's core. The dragon egg might hatch at any time, and I have to ensure that nothing happens to it. We'll meet in this room again in the evening. If you're done with your matters, we'll rush to the Earth Spirit Mountain Range overnight." Ji Dong nodded and said, "All right, then it's settled. There's no time to lose, I'll leave now." He could rest assured that the flaming bar would temporarily return to the Earth's core. Over there, she was the Empress. Not to mention one Ah Jin, even 100 Ah Jins wouldn't be a threat to her. Moreover, after yesterday's deterrence, Ah Jin seemed to be even more fearful of the flaming bar. After exiting the Vermilion Bird Hotel, Ji Dong looked in the direction of the stick of incense. Ah Bing should have recovered by now. This could be considered as fulfilling Senior Fury's wish. After all, Ah Bing's injury was caused by saving Fury. Ji Dong asked around and found the largest winery on Binghua Avenue. He directly used a level 6 crystal core as a deposit to order a large amount of brandy and whiskey of various years, as well as a large number of transparent crystal bottles. These crystal bottles were mainly round because the yin-yang fish was round and the size of a fist. They were used to hold magic skill wine. These glass bottles and wine were equivalent to the paper of magic skill scrolls. Ji Dong didn't have many gold coins on him now, but he had plenty of crystal cores. After ordering the wine, Ji Dong also inquired about the location of 2 places from the winery. These 2 places were the location of the Magic Guild in Central Plain City, and the other was the Prince Equivalent's Palace. These were the places he had to go today. He had long heard from Fury that selling crystal cores at the Magic Guild was the most reasonable price. Of course, the prerequisite was that you had to be a member of the Magic Guild. Although Ji Dong wasn't one yet with his strength, it wouldn't be a problem to pass the test. He and the Flaming Bar were preparing to travel around the continent and needed money to support it. Thus, he planned to exchange a batch of non-fire crystal cores for some cash to cover his expenses and to pay for the wine he ordered. As for going to the Prince Equivalent's Palace, he was prepared to look for Ji Yeshang and conveniently settle the matter of paying respects to his parents in this world. The location of the Magic Guild was on 5th Earth Avenue, and the Imperial Palace of the Central Plains Empire was also on this avenue. From this, it could be seen how revered the Magic Guild was in various countries. Ji Dong had been to 5th Earth Avenue more than once, so he had a certain impression of the location of the Magic Guild. Soon, he turned from Binghua Avenue to the adjacent 5th Earth Avenue. Passing by the Imperial Palace, his eyes subconsciously looked in the direction of the Imperial Palace. Back then, he was the target of the most intense pursuit here. The Crown Prince of the Central Plains Empire, Ji Feng, died in his hands. With the passage of time, the assassination order from back then was no longer there. After so many years, his appearance had changed quite a bit. Even those who were familiar with him in the past might not be able to recognize him. Not far after passing by the Imperial Palace, Ji Dong saw his destination. The building of the Magic Guild was also a tall building. The entire building was in the shape of a pentagon. From where Ji Dong was, he could see that it was facing the direction of Fifth Earth Avenue. The walls were yellow, representing the earth element of the Central Plains Empire. The entire building was more than 20 meters tall and had at least 5 floors. The building gave off an extremely heavy feeling. Right above the yellow walls, a huge circular logo was hung there. The logo had a diameter of at least 3 meters. The logo presented 10 different colors. With the center as the starting point, black lines separated the 10 colors. Each color represented a type of magic, and on the corresponding color, the name of the heavenly stem was engraved. For example, the green area was engraved with the word A and the dark green area was engraved with the word B. Although the entire logo seemed a little complicated, it was very dazzling. Every colored area seemed to be inlaid with a stone of a unique color. Under the illumination of the morning sun, it was exceptionally dazzling. This was the logo of the Magic Guild. Ji Dong knew that this Magic Guild was where the headquarters of all the Magic Guilds on the continent were located. As the strongest and most powerful country on the continent, the headquarters of some of the major guilds were located here. Unless it was an association with a specific attribute, such as the Bartender Association, it would only appear in other empires. Ji Dong stood in front of the door and looked around. Then, he stepped onto the stairs and walked towards the headquarters of the Magic Guild. There weren't any guards in front of the Yin and Yang magician headquarters. The wide arched door allowed people to enter and exit freely. From this point, it could be seen how generous this Magic Guild was. They weren't worried about people coming to cause trouble at all. Whoever dared to cause trouble at the Magic Guild was either water in the head or tired of living. As he approached the door, the first thing that Ji Dong saw was a huge hall. The hall was also pentagonal. The 5 walls were 5 different colors, representing the attributes of the 5 elements. "Excuse me, how can I help you?" Before Ji Dong could observe more, a gentle voice came from the side. Ji Dong turned his head and saw a girl in a white dress had already walked to his side and stood there. This girl had a slender figure and her looks could be considered above average. She had a professional smile on her face and was slightly bowing to him. At the same time, Ji Dong also noticed that there were more than 20 girls in the same attire. They were standing in a row at the side of the entrance. It could be said that they were all carefully selected. Coupled with their long white dresses, it would make people subconsciously have a good impression of them at first glance. Ji Dong looked at her with interest and said, "You are?" The girl in white smiled and said, "I'm the guide of the Yin and Yang magician headquarters." "Excuse me, how can I help you?" "Guide? So advanced?" As expected of the Magic Guild. Ji Dong's impression of this Magic Guild immediately increased and he said, "I'm here for 2 matters today. One is to accept the assessment and join the guild. The second is to sell some crystal cores after joining the guild." Hearing Ji Dong's words, the girl in white nodded and said, "That's good. I'll have to trouble you to follow me." Saying that, she brought Ji Dong and turned to walk inside. Because it was still early in the morning, there weren't many people in the Magic Guild headquarters. There were only 7 or 8 magicians. Some of them were like Ji Dong, wearing ordinary cloth clothes. Some were wearing the magician robe of their own attribute. The girl in white brought Ji Dong to the right side of the hall. As they walked, she said to him, "Since you're here to join the guild, then it's your first time here. Since it's your first time here, you must first register your identity. After registration, you can take part in the assessment. The guild will give you a fair evaluation based on your strength and give you an identity badge. Then, you will become a member of the guild. But, there's one thing you must take note of. In our headquarters, Only magicians who are at least 3 crowns and above have the right to enter the second floor to buy or sell various items. Very obviously, the girl in white saw that Ji Dong was young, so she gave him this kind reminder. But Ji Dong discovered that when she said these words, her face carried a faint smile from beginning to end. There wasn't the slightest bit of disdain or contempt. It could be said that her guidance was impeccable. "Thank you for your reminder." Ji Dong returned a smile and nodded to her. The girl in white brought Ji Dong to a tall counter. He needed to climb up 3 steps before he could stand at the window. After bringing Ji Dong here, the girl in white smiled and said, "After you register here, you can enter from the door over there. On the left side of the door is the assessment area. There will be someone in charge of receiving you. I still have to go and guide the others. I wish you success in your assessment." After slightly Hyoheim bowed, the girl in white turned and left. Behind the counter was a young man who looked like he was in his 20s. He took out a form, but didn't pass it to Ji Dong. Instead, he placed it in front of him. He picked up the pen and raised his head. "Hello, please answer my questions so that we can register." Okay. He didn't even need to write it himself? The service of the magician headquarters was really on point. The smile on Ji Dong's face didn't change. As expected of the home of a magician, every place gave people a comfortable feeling. Name? Ji Dong. Gender? Male. Age? 20. Graduate school? Hearing this question, Ji Dong slightly hesitated. Of course, he knew that if he signed up for the Heavenly STEM Academy, or even the Inyang School, it would be of great help to him. However, he didn't do that because he didn't really graduate from the Heavenly STEM Academy. So, his answer was, Fire Academy. Fire Academy? The young man looked up at Ji Dong and scratched his head. "I don't think I've heard of this advanced academy." Ji Dong indifferently smiled and said, "It's just an ordinary academy. It's not an advanced academy." The young man's brush paused for a moment and said, "Mister, to be honest, if you are only a junior college graduate, you can register at your country's magician guild. Because when you come to the headquarters to register, if your magic power does not exceed 3 crowns, then you will not be granted the qualifications. The headquarters has a higher threshold." Ji Dong nodded and said, "Thank you for the reminder. Continue." The young man didn't see any confidence or other emotions on Ji Dong's face, only calmness and indifference. He then continued to ask, "Magic power attribute?" Ji Dong answered, "Yin and Yang fire." Chapter 207. Ah! The youth was stunned. He had been in charge of registration here for 2 years, but he had never heard of someone with attributes like Ji Dong's. For a moment, not only was he stunned, but the way he looked at Ji Dong also changed a little. Ji Dong said, "Just fill it according to what I said." He didn't intend to hide his strength here, and didn't want to hide anything. The current him was no longer that low-level magician who could be easily bullied by others when he was crowned 2 or 3 times. The youth filled in the form according to Ji Dong's instructions, and then asked about his birthplace and a series of other questions, until the end he asked, "Your magic power level." Ji Dong's heart moved and he asked back, "From the Inyang crown, it's very easy to see a magician's level. Then why does the guild still conduct a magician evaluation?" The youth calmly said, "Seems like it's really your first time coming to the magician guild. I'm afraid you haven't even been to any of the branches before. Our magician evaluation is not to evaluate your level. In our magician guild, there is a separate set of titles, used to evaluate a magician's actual fighting ability. Among magicians, the same magic power level, the difference in strength can be like heaven and earth. Simply put, some magicians can have powerful magic skills, some magicians almost have no real battle experience. In a real battle, their victory or defeat can be imagined. What our magician guild wants to evaluate is the true strength of magicians. There are some magicians whose magic power reached 4 crowns, but we can only give 2 stars, and some magicians who only have 3 crowns, can be rated as high as 4 stars. This is the reason. Ji Dong suddenly understood. So that's how it is, you are the same as the Bartenders Guild, also using 1 to 9 stars to evaluate magicians. The young man couldn't help but laugh. In terms of titles, yes. But there's one thing you need to take note of. The Bartenders Guild is only a second-rank guild, while our Magicians Guild is one of the 2 special-ranked guilds in the entire continent. Even though we have the same number of stars, the meaning is completely different. Magicians who receive a 6-star title from us will be given the title of Viscount or higher in any country. Becoming a general wouldn't be a problem for them. As for titles that are 6-star and above, they can only be evaluated by our headquarters. Ji Dong asked curiously, other than the Magician Guild, there is another special guild? What's that? The youth said, it's the Magic Skill Guild. They only recognize skills, not magic power. The headquarters of the Magic Skill Guild is also here, on Home Road. If you are interested, you can go take a look. As long as you have enough money, or use your skills to exchange, you will definitely be able to get the magic skill you want. The evaluation there is also completely based on magic power. There's also the Magic Skill Guild? Ji Dong's curiosity was piqued. It should be known that, for a long time, most of his time could be said to be spent on cultivation. He did not know much about the various things in the world of magicians. Today, he had a day to deal with all sorts of things. Since the Magic Skill Guild was not far from here, there was still a lot of time. After he finished selling the crystal cores here, he would go there to take a look. He was not going there to buy magic skills, but to see what level his magic skills would reach if they were to be evaluated. Sir, you haven't told me your level yet. Oh, level 61. Ji Dong was thinking about the Magic Skill Guild in his mind, so he answered casually. The youth looked at Ji Dong, his gaze instantly became dull, and with a bang, the pen in his hand fell on the table, completely speechless for a moment. 20 years old, level 61. He had never heard of such a situation. Even in the Yinyang Hall of the Heavenly STEM Academy, there had never been such a monster. Sorry to trouble you, hurry up. Ji Dong's voice brought the youth back to his senses, and he hurriedly filled in his magic power level, then passed the form to Ji Dong. Thank you. Ji Dong turned around and left. Since he still had to make a trip to the Magic Skill Guild, then he had to hurry up. The voice of the youth came from behind. Are you really that level? Ji Dong turned back and smiled. Won't you know after my evaluation? There was no point in talking too much, and speaking with facts was Ji Dong's favorite method. Holding the completed form in his hand, Ji Dong walked through the front door. As soon as he stepped through the door, his feeling changed. All of a sudden, the air was filled with rich magical energy ripples. There were all 10 elements here, but they didn't exist side by side. Instead, they were constantly changing. Earth element magic energy, fire element magic energy, 10 elements were alternating. After entering the door, there was a circular hall, on the right was a staircase, and on the left was another door, above which there were 3 large words, Testing Hall. This is it. Ji Dong stepped into the testing hall, and after entering the door, he immediately saw that the testing hall was circular, about 10 meters in diameter, and there was a person standing in the center. It was a middle-aged man who looked to be in his 40s, with a calm demeanor, broad shoulders, and in Ji Dong's eyes, he could tell at a glance that this was an earth element magic master. The middle-aged man glanced at the form in Ji Dong's hand and said, "Newcomer?" Ji Dong nodded. The middle-aged man said. The middle-aged man said, "The evaluation rules of the headquarters is that you have to go up 1 level at a time. Newcomers, even if their level is high enough, must pass through each level and cannot challenge those of a higher level. The next time you come, you can directly take the corresponding test using your identity. I am a 3-star examiner, so you can also call me a 3-star examiner. If you feel that you are not as good as me, you can still withdraw now. Our tests are all conducted through actual combat, and when I feel that you have the strength of a 3-star, I will directly let you pass, and there is no need to determine the winner. As expected, there were no 1-star or 2-star examiners here. This was the specialty of the headquarters. Come on. Ji Dong's answer was very simple. Be careful. The middle-aged man reminded him, and with a flash of light, earthen yellow magic was released in an instant. It was the earth element, and the white sun crown on his head impressively showed the level of 5 crowns and 2 stars. A level 54 earth element grandmaster was indeed qualified to be evaluated as a 3-star magician. From his sharp eyes, it could be seen that this person must have been through hundreds of battles. An inch of time was an inch of gold, and Ji Dong still had many things to do today. Naturally, he would not waste time here. When the middle-aged man released the sun crown, his body had already rushed out, and he did not even release his own yin-yang crown. His body was low, and the tip of his feet touched the ground, as if he was gliding along the ground. Because the area was very small, Ji Dong was only 5 meters away from the magician. With Ji Dong's current strength, even without magic, he only needed to rely on his physical strength to cross the 5 meters in an instant. The middle-aged man only felt his vision blur, but his reaction was still very fast. His rich experience in combat made him feel a strong sense of danger, and he did not attempt to use any complicated magic skills. He used both hands to protect his chest, and the other to protect his lower abdomen. Both of his arms vibrated at the same time, and instantly, a ball of yellow light blossomed between his hands. In an instant, it exploded, emitting a thick and heavy aura, and turned into a thick earthen shield in front of him. However, in the next moment, his pupils immediately shrank. Ji Dong's response was very simple. Facing the earthen shield, he only responded with a punch that was filled with indomitable force. This was an explosion of physical strength, and not the release of magic. The earth element magic was unable to suppress the mobility at all, and the earthen shield that was filled with magic was actually forcefully blasted a huge hole in the earthen shield. The 3-star examiner let out a muffled groan, and his chest retracted inward. He barely managed to block Ji Dong's fist with his palms. He only felt a strong force coming from his body, and his entire body flew out uncontrollably, crashing heavily into the wall at the back of the examination hall. Without his support, the earthen shield dissipated on its own, and Ji Dong's body was not stained with any dust. He retracted his fist, and stood upright and asked casually, "Is that enough?" The 3-star examiner slid to the ground, feeling a tightness in his chest. However, he was not injured, and his expression changed drastically at this moment. He was very clear about his own strength, and he was very confident in both his magic and combat ability. He was also a well-deserved 5-star expert in the guild. However, in front of this young man, it was just a simple punch that did not contain any magic. The young man did not even keep the form, and with just a single punch, he was able to break through his defense and send him flying. How terrifying was his physical strength to be able to do that! It was obvious that the young man had shown mercy. Otherwise, as long as the previous attack had been infused with magic, he was afraid that he would be finished now. What level of strength was this? With Ji Dong's current strength, it was indeed far from what a 5-crown magic master could contend with. He took a seemingly simple punch, but it was a display of the complete unity of essence, chi, and spirit. When he blasted out that punch just now, he had intended to release some third fire magic to break the shield. However, when he blasted out that punch, he suddenly recalled the scene when he withstood Ajin's attack yesterday. The momentum and strength were perfectly integrated, which resulted in such a powerful punch. Because of the flaming bar last night, he did not carefully think about his experience after the battle with Ajin. At this time, he naturally displayed it. Only then did Ji Dong understand that his combat ability and control of magic had really reached another level. Of course, what he did not know was that the reason why he was able to comprehend the mysteries so quickly was because he had fused with the chaotic soul's fire. The appearance of the soul's fire had improved Ji Dong's abilities in all aspects. His immense spiritual energy had naturally made his comprehension far surpass that of ordinary people, reaching an extremely terrifying level. The three-star examiner looked at Ji Dong incredulously, and after a while, he reluctantly said, "3-star assessment passed." As he spoke, he couldn't wait to come in front of Ji Dong. He took the registration form from Ji Dong's hand and looked at it. Then, he handed a round metal ball to Ji Dong. There were 3 sex patterns on it. Pointing to a small door at the back of the test hall, he said, "Enter the 4-star test hall from here. You can also choose to rest here for half an hour. Oh, I have to remind you that during the test, you can't use any magic weapons." Ji Dong shook his head. "No, thank you." He directly walked through the small door. Watching Ji Dong's back as he left, the 3-star examiner murmured, "20 years old, level 61, Fire Academy? Since when did such a powerful academy appear on the continent? It seems that I should go to the headquarters and inquire about it. However, even if he is level 61, he shouldn't be able to repel me without releasing any magic power. This is really too inconceivable. Why is his attribute written as Yin and Yang twin flames?" Walking into the 4-star test area, it was clearly larger than the 3-star test hall from before. The room was also circular, but the diameter was more than 15 meters, giving more space to use. There was also a person standing in the middle of the test hall. Compared to the 3-star examiner from before, he was a bit younger, handsome, and looked to be in his 30s. "Please." Ji Dong didn't say anything else. He directly made a gesture to the 4-star examiner, and at the same time, shook the metal ball in his hand. A trace of a smile appeared on the middle-aged man's face, and he said, "Young man, you're quite impatient." However, in the next moment, the smile on his face stiffened, because Ji Dong's body was already rushing towards him like a thunderbolt. His entire body was like a cannonball, and there was actually no technique to speak of. It was just simple, direct, and violent. Feeling the pressure coming from Ji Dong's body, the middle-aged man released his yang crown without hesitation. The brand on the yang crown was in the shape of a water droplet. He was a 9th element magician, and he also had 5 crowns, but there were 4.5 stars on his crown ring. He was level 59, not far from breaking through to level 60. Unlike the earth element magician from before, when facing Ji Dong's attack, this 9th element magician separated his hands in front of his chest, each drawing an arc. His gentle magic gave off a feeling of smoothness. It was soft, yet full of toughness and the majestic aura of the 9th element magician. Just from the aura released by his magic, one could tell that this magician had a deep understanding of the 9th element magician, and he was able to fully unleash the characteristics of the 9th element magician's magic. Ji Dong secretly praised in his heart. Although he was also a 5-element magician, his strength was clearly much stronger than the 3-star examiner from before. Within his gentle magic waves, there were countless moves hidden. It was like a huge net, waiting for Ji Dong to fly into it like a moth flying into a flame. Unfortunately, Ji Dong was already a flame, so how could he fly into it like a moth flying into a flame? In that instant, Ji Dong's eyes lit up. Both of his hands moved at the same time, making a movement in the air, as if he was flapping his wings. His left arm turned blue, and his right arm turned red. The Bing and Ding flames appeared at the same time, meeting the gentle yang magic of the 9th element magician's hands. Chapter 208. This is? The 4-star examiner's pupils constricted instantly. Their 4 hands collided almost at the same time. The difference in magical power caused the 4-star examiner's level 59 magical power to be completely driven by Ji Dong's level 61 magical power. Their 4 hands ultimately collided at the center of the two. When the 9th water collided with the 9th water, it naturally formed a ninth water with a stacked attack. However, when the third fire and fourth fire collided, it was not as simple as stacking. Instead, it was the explosion of the yin-yang twin flames combination skill. Boom! In the sound of the explosion, the 4-star examiner also followed in the 3-star examiner's footsteps and was sent flying. Ji Dong took his place, standing proudly. The whole process of the battle sounded complicated, but in reality, it only took a second for the outcome to be decided. It was not to say that the magical skill Ji Dong had displayed was very powerful. The key was the difference in magical power between the two sides, the instant explosive power of the combination skill, and the speed at which Ji Dong did not give his opponent any time to prepare. Victory was decided in an instant. After all, this was only a test and not a battle to the death. As long as he displayed his strength to his opponent and proved that he could pass the test, it would be enough. The 4-star examiner stared at Ji Dong with wide eyes and said, "Single yin-yang twin flames combination skill." Ji Dong smiled calmly and said, "Can I pass now?" The 4-star examiner nodded without hesitation and said, "Of course. You are the strongest genius I have ever seen. May I ask you a question?" Ji Dong said, "Please speak." The 4-star examiner said, "Why did the yin-yang crown not appear when you used the yin-yang twin flames combination skill?" Ji Dong said, "Because my magical power output has not reached the level where I need to release the yin-yang crown." He was not wrong at all. As the owner of the ultimate dual flames, the owner of the soul fire, just releasing the third fire and fourth fire was indeed not enough for him to release his yin-yang crown. The 4-star examiner tossed the metallic ball over. His eyes shone with excitement as he said, "Please continue onwards. I really want to see how far you can go. It has been a long time since I've been this excited. It's an honor to meet you." The yin and yang dual attributes could be said to be blessed by the heavens, or rather, one of a kind. If the 3-star examiner from the previous stage still had some doubts about Ji Dong's magic power, then this 4-star examiner would not have any doubts. The suppression of magic power was enough to prove that this 20-year-old youth in front of him had more magic power than him. Level 59 and level 61, it seemed like there was only a difference of 2 levels, but in reality these 2 levels were worlds apart. 5 crowns and 6 crowns were not the same concept at all. In the end, the 4-star metallic ball was 4 metal ball. To the 4-star examiner's surprise, Ji Dong did not continue forward to take the 5-star test. Instead, he turned and walked back. "You've gone in the wrong direction. The 5-star examiner should continue forward." The 4-star examiner hurriedly reminded him. Ji Dong shook his head and said, "There's no need to continue forward. The 4-star status is enough for me to sell crystal cores. I still have many things to do, and I don't have time to waste here." He was only here to sell crystal cores. He did not have to obtain any kind of position in the headquarters. To him, that did not mean much. However, the 4-star examiner did not think so. He had seen many magicians, and which one of them did not come here to try their best to reach the highest standard they could reach? The youth in front of him was at least 5 or 6 stars, but he actually did not want to continue the test, and the reason was that he did not have enough time. This made the 4-star examiner's jaw drop. This was the first time he had seen such a magician. Without waiting for the 4-star examiner to say anything, Ji Dong had already walked back. When he passed the 3-star examiner, the 3-star examiner could not help but be stunned and said, "Finished so quickly? You didn't pass the 4-star exam?" Ji Dong flashed the metallic ball in his hand and said, "I've passed. I still have to ask you, how did you determine my 4-star status?" The 3-star examiner looked at him dumbfoundedly and said, "Don't tell me you passed the 4-star exam building in such a short few minutes and even stopped at the 5-star exam building? Take the metallic ball and go to the right side of the hall to make your identity insignia." Ji Dong did not answer his question. After a word of thanks, he turned and left the examination hall. He did not know that at this time, the 4-star examiner had already gone directly to the magician headquarters examination committee to report Ji Dong's matter. Returning to the hall again, Ji Dong easily found the place the 3-star examiner mentioned. He handed over the 2 metallic balls and his own form and waited for the insignia to be made. The production staff told him that he had to wait for about a quarter of an hour and the insignia that symbolized his identity would be completed. At this time, the number of people in the magician headquarters hall had gradually increased. Those dozens of white-clothed guides were all busy. When the white-clothed girl who guided him before saw him making the insignia, she could not help but smile at him. Being able to make the insignia proved that Ji Dong had at least passed the 3-star exam. Ji Dong returned the smile. Magician headquarters as a whole gave him a rather good feeling. The guide's service, the staff's diligence, they were all quite satisfactory. Moreover, in the entire examination, they did not charge him any fees. It could be seen that magician headquarters was rich and overbearing. No wonder it was one of the 2 special guilds on the continent. Standing beside the insignia-making counter, Ji Dong's mind began to think about the state he reached when he collided with Ah Jin yesterday, as well as the complete fusion of Ah Jin's aura and strength when he attacked. In an instant, he used his aura to suppress the opponent so that the opponent could not use his strength, as well as the ability to use his aura to increase his attack power in an instant. These could all be decisive in actual combat. Although it was noisy here, his mind was completely immersed in the understanding of this actual combat experience. Suddenly, a scream woke Ji Dong from his thoughts. When he looked up, he saw that the Magician Guild had already become somewhat chaotic. The one who let out the scream was the guide who had guided him before. At this time, she was being grabbed by a tall and sturdy man. The sturdy man was still scolding. "What are you pretending to be pure for? Aren't you just a toy? Stop." At least 7 or 8 staff of the magician headquarters rushed up, wanting to stop the sturdy man. Who knew that the sturdy man's eyes widened. He lifted his right foot and suddenly stomped on the ground. In the midst of a loud bang, a circle of earthy yellow surging magic clearly exploded. It was like a rising earthquake wave in an instant. It actually shook the staff, who rushed up and scattered them in all directions. One must know that among these staff, there were around the level of 4 crowns. A white 6-crowned sun crown brazenly appeared on the head of the sturdy man in his 40s. He snorted disdainfully and said, "Is this the magician headquarters? It doesn't look like much." Ji Dong had been paying close attention to this person. He discovered that although this sturdy man had grabbed the guide in white, there was no lust in his eyes. Instead, there was more arrogance and provocation. Obviously, he was not here to molest the guide, but to deliberately cause trouble. This was the magician headquarters. Would there be people from the magician headquarters to cause trouble? This 6-crown man of the earth element, where did he come from? However, no matter where he came from, Ji Dong had already appeared in front of him. Not for anything else, but for the guide's detailed explanation and kind smile. "Let her go," Ji Dong said faintly. The sturdy man snorted disdainfully and said, "Who are you? Those old guys didn't come out, but a kid like you came out?" Ji Dong did not care about the other party's insult. His expression did not change. He glanced at the white-robed girl's pleading gaze and repeated, "Let her go." Scram! The sturdy man's right foot stepped on the ground again. The yellow wave instantly rose. But this time, it was not a full-scale attack. Instead, it was specifically aimed at Ji Dong. A yellow light instantly spread to his feet. At this time, Ji Dong moved. He did not dodge, but took a step forward. Everyone felt a blur in front of their eyes. Although the earthquake wave exploded, Ji Dong's step had already arrived in front of the sturdy man. His palm went straight for the yin-yang crown on the other party's head. The whole movement was smooth like flowing water. There was no pause at all. Almost in a flash, His hand had already reached the top of the sturdy man's head. Ji Dong was able to pass the Magician Union's 2 tests with 2 strikes. It was definitely not due to luck. After fusing several changes in his body with the chaotic flame, his whole body's explosive power had already reached an appalling level. The speed produced by this explosive power was enough to catch any opponent unprepared. When the palm came down, there was also no magic wave. However, that sharp pressure like a sharp knife made the sturdy man's expression change. He no longer cared about grabbing the girl. He raised his right hand, and in the midst of the dazzling yellow light, he met Hyoheim's palm. The 2 palms met. The sturdy man only felt a vast and majestic aura instantly pouring into his palm. His whole body trembled violently. Ji Dong had already hugged the white-robed girl and jumped up. He floated back to his previous position and put the white-robed girl down. The white-robed girl was previously threatened by the sturdy man. Her beautiful face had already turned pale. As she panted, her chest violently heaved up and down. Ji Dong smiled at her and said, "It's fine now." At this time, the sturdy man's right arm that had met Ji Dong's palm had already softly drooped down. Soybean-sized beads of sweat continuously rolled down his head. His eyes stared fixedly at Ji Dong, as if he wanted to eat him up. Ji Dong looked at him coldly and said, "Let me say it twice. I'll cripple your arm." The palm he had used just now was exactly the same as the one he had used to receive Ajin's attack yesterday. In fact, he had even held back. Moreover, this time, it was not the ultimate dual fire that was separated, but fused together, emitting a peaceful noble spirit. Although it did not have the ultimate attribute, this noble spirit had a stronger explosive power. It broke through the opponent's earth-forming demon power and completely shattered his arm. After leaving the Earth's core, Ji Dong found that the god-slaying strike was more and more handy. The combat power that erupted from the opponent's body was extremely terrifying. If he wanted to, he could have completely shattered the opponent's body when his palm came into contact with the strong man just now. This was the horror of the god-slaying strike. Once it came into contact, it would be an explosive destruction. Not to mention that the opponent was a 6-crown Devil Master. Even an 8-crown Devil Master would not feel good after being hit by Ji Dong's god-slaying strike. At this moment, dozens of Devil Masters had already rushed out from the Devil Masters' headquarters. Behind the sturdy man, dozens of people also quickly gathered. Both sides were facing each other, and Ji Dong was between them. Ji Dong glanced at both sides, then turned around and walked back to the badge-making counter, as if nothing had happened. However, from the corner of his eye, he could still see that the 4-star examiner was among the devils that had rushed out from the Devil Master's headquarters. He was looking at him while saying something to an old man who was the leader of the Devil Master's headquarters. "Wofo, you have repeatedly come to our Devil Master's headquarters to cause trouble. Do you think there is no one in our Devil Master's headquarters?" An old man who was the leader of the Devil Master's headquarters said coldly. Among the dozens of people with the sturdy man, an old man also walked out. He was wearing a black robe and had a tall and thin figure. He smiled coldly and said, "There should only be one special guild on the continent, and that is our Devil Skills Guild. The existence of your Devil Masters Guild is completely meaningless. Shiluo, only when our 2 big guilds unite, can we truly have the power to control the continent." The old man called Shiluo sneered and said, "The 2 big guilds unite, and then your Devil Skills Guild will be the leader, right?" Wofo smiled proudly and said, "In the world of Devil Masters, everything is based on strength. Your Devil Master's headquarters doesn't have a single supreme being below you, so naturally, you have to listen to us. Our Lord President very much hopes to unite the 2 big guilds and develop together." Shiluo said angrily, "Who said that our Devil Master's headquarters doesn't have a supreme being expert? It's just that the president is out traveling. Moreover, don't forget there is still Ji Changshin, His Majesty Big Dipper, protecting the Middle-earth Empire. Wefo said, His Majesty Ji Changshin is indeed powerful, but he won't care about the matters of our two big guilds. The last time he appeared was also 5 years ago. If you don't agree to merge, I don't mind sealing the door for you. Listening to the conversation between the two sides, Ji Dong couldn't help but be confused. He turned his head and asked the girl in white beside him, What's going on? Why would the Devil Skills Guild come looking for trouble with the Devil Masters Guild? The girl was saved by Ji Dong, and her eyes were full of gratitude. She whispered without reservation, There are many interests involved. Our Devil Masters Guild and the Devil Skills Guild are known as the two big special guilds of the continent. All along, both of us have many supporters. Relatively speaking, our Devil Masters Guild has a longer history and provides more services to the Devil Masters. We are deeply supported by the Devil Masters. Although the Devil Skills Guild has a large number of cultivation methods of magic skills, their price is extremely high, and they are not as popular as us. Chapter 209. The guide, the girl in white, continued to explain the conflict between the two guilds to Ji Dong. Originally, our Magician Guild's strength was slightly stronger among the two guilds, and the Magician Guild was more like our vassal. But ever since the president left the guild 30 years ago, this situation has gradually changed. Although there aren't many magicians in the Magic Arts Guild, all of them are experts, and their president is a sovereign expert. Although our president is also a sovereign expert, he isn't here, so our overall strength has gradually become weaker. Originally, there wouldn't be any problems, because His Majesty Yin Zhaorong of the Heavenly STEM Academy has been very caring towards our guild, and is the honorary president of the guild. But 5 years ago, for some unknown reason, His Majesty Yin Zhaorong suddenly had a falling out with the Heavenly STEM Academy, and left the Central Plains city. Because of this, the backing of our Magic Arts Guild has become slightly weaker. These few years, the Magic Arts Guild has often stirred up trouble, and even proposed a merger between the two major guilds, and even wanted them to be the leader. The two major guilds are not willing to offend the Central Plains Empire, so they have turned a blind eye to it, and no one has come to mediate. This time, I'm afraid that they have come with ill intentions. You've injured the people of the Magic Arts Guild, so hurry up and leave, or else you'll be in trouble. Ji Dong suddenly understood. So that was the case. Indeed, the Yin and Yang magician was the most important force in the mainland, who wouldn't try their best to fight for it. Whoever controlled the Yin and Yang magician group would have the highest authority in the mainland. This was also the reason why the Ink Guild wanted to annex the Magician Guild. The Magician Guild actually didn't even have a single supreme being, so it was no wonder that people coveted it. At this moment, the two sides were already at each other's throats. The more they talked, the stiffer it was, as if they were about to start a fight. At this moment, Ji Dong's expression suddenly changed. An indescribable feeling appeared in his heart, and the soul fire in his body fluctuated violently. The soul fire was the fusion of his own soul and the magic of chaos. When facing danger, it would sense it. Just as Ji Dong's mind was surging and he subconsciously clenched his fists, an incomparably tyrannical coercion instantly appeared in the hall of the magician's headquarters. And this pressure gave people the feeling of turbulent waves. It wasn't released at once, but came in waves. The pressure actually formed a superposition effect in the air, causing people to be unable to breathe. The stability of the air dropped rapidly, and almost instantly, it dropped to the freezing point. In the air, there were no other magical elements, only thick water vapor. This is extreme ninth water? What a powerful extreme ninth water! At this moment, what Ji Dong felt was like the vermilion bird releasing her powerful pressure, and the one who could produce this kind of pressure was without a doubt, the Nine-Crowned Supreme. The Ninth-Crowned Supreme being of the ninth element water element. The highest title of the ninth element water element was known as the Divine Empress. It was of the same lineage as the Heavenly Empress of the ninth element water totem. This was also the fourth Supreme Being's aura that Ji-dong had felt. That ice-cold ninth element water made him, the owner of the ultimate dual flames, extremely uncomfortable. A melodious voice sounded in the hall of the Magician Guild. "Shi Luo, I know you don't want to accept this, but if the Magician Guild continues like this, it will only get worse and worse. This is the last chance I'm giving you. If you win, my Magician Guild will merge with the Magician Guild, and if you lose, you will merge with my Magician Guild. This is a fair competition. If you don't participate in this competition, then 1 month later, I will raze this place to the ground. Magician Guild, leave." It was hard to tell the age of the melodious voice, but with every word he said, the pressure in the air increased. When he finally finished speaking, all the magicians with cultivation lower than 6 crowns had already fallen to the ground. Those who could still stand were all at least 6 crowns, which naturally included Ji-dong. The instructor beside him was also lucky. With the help of Ji-dong's magic, he didn't fall. The pressure suddenly disappeared, and everyone began to pant. On the side of the Magician Guild, only the magician named Shi Luo's expression was normal. He shouted in a deep voice, "Her Majesty God Empress, in 1 month, the Magician Guild will accept the challenge and end this matter." Wofa glanced at him indifferently, then brought the people of the Magician Guild out of the hall. The dozens of people he brought, each had the strength of at least 6 crowns. From this, it could be seen how deep the foundation of the Magician Guild was. The muscular man whose arm was crippled by Ji-dong stared at Ji-dong with hatred, then raised his other hand and pointed at him, then left. Without a doubt, he wouldn't let this matter go. The 2 big guilds were fighting, and the magicians who came to the Magician Guild to do business had ugly expressions. The pressure of a supreme being was terrifying. No one would feel good. For a moment, although the people of the Magician Guild had left, the Magician Guild's hall was as silent as death. After a while, the old magician named Shi Luo slowly said, "All right, everyone return to your positions. Today's matter will be resolved by the Magician Guild." After saying that, he waved his sleeves, then turned around and left. At this time, Ji-dong's emblem was also completed. The 4-star emblem was a silver plate, round in shape, with 4 stars embossed on it, and a string of numbers below. One could vaguely feel the magic waves emitted from it. On the back, there were small engravings, containing the basic information that Ji-dong had filled in on the form. As long as this emblem was worn on the left chest, it would show the magician's rank in the Magician Guild. Everything that happened before had nothing to do with Ji-dong, so he didn't care too much. After all, he didn't plan to fight with the Magician Guild. After wearing the emblem on his chest, he prepared to sell his crystal cores. At this time, the 4-star examiner from before strode over, came to Ji-dong's side, and said to him, "Little brother, our Vice President Shi Luo invites you to come." Ji-dong frowned. He originally wanted to refuse, but on second thought, he had just become a member of the Magician Guild, and if he refused like this, it would make him seem unreasonable. Previously, he had just beaten up the people of the Magician Guild, and seeing that he couldn't go to the Magician Guild, he had plenty of time, so it was fine to go take a look. "Please lead the way." Because of the previous matter, the 4-star examiner's expression was very ugly. As a member of the Magician Guild, seeing the Magician Guild being humiliated, his mood naturally wasn't good. He didn't say much, and walked in front, bringing Ji-dong directly into the hall, and went up the stairs that Ji-dong saw before. However, it wasn't the 2nd floor, but the 3rd floor. The Magician Guild headquarters had a total of 3 floors, but it was different from the 3 floors of ordinary buildings, because the height of each floor was more than 10 meters, and it was grand and grand. At the entrance of the 3rd floor, there were 2 middle-aged men in their 50s, both of whom Ji-dong didn't see among the crowd of magicians. The 4-star examiner showed a white jade card, and then brought Ji-dong up the stairs. And when passing by these 2 middle-aged men, with the sharpness of the soul fire, Ji Dong clearly felt that these two people's magical power was actually above 7 crowns. With 7 crowns guarding the stairs, what exactly was this third floor? Arriving at the third floor, the first thing that Ji Dong saw was another hall, but what made him curious was that there were no decorations here, not even the simplest totem carvings of the 10 elements. The entire hall was completely paved with blue bricks, the walls, the roof, and so on. But it was this simple blue brick that was filled with a familiar aura to Ji Dong. It wasn't any kind of attribute, but chaos. With this discovery, Ji Dong couldn't help but be shocked. In the Magician Guild, there was the existence of chaos chi? What was going on? Although the chaos chi on the third floor was very weak, Ji Dong could clearly feel that the chaos here was extremely pure, and it didn't contain any other attributes, only the aura full of creation. In the hall, there were more than 30 magicians. Each of them chose a place to sit cross-legged and quietly cultivate. No wonder the third floor was guarded by 2 7-crown magicians. In this place filled with chaos chi, no matter how weak it was, it could be said to be the holy land for magicians to cultivate. Any magician who cultivated here would be better than any other place that suited their attribute. The chaos chi that was filled with creation was the best place for their mana to grow. Vaguely, Ji Dong had already guessed a few things, but he still couldn't be sure. He also gradually understood why the Magician Guild wanted to swallow up the Magician Guild, even at the cost of incurring the wrath of all the magicians in the Magician Guild. This seemingly simple hall was completely worthy of being called a place of supreme treasures. The cultivation speed here was twice the result with half the effort, which magician wouldn't be envious. The 30 or so magicians who could cultivate here were all at least 6 crown. Among them, there were a few who had especially strong auras. Even Ji Dong couldn't completely determine their strength. It was obvious that they were 8 crown experts. Although the Magician Guild didn't have a sovereign expert to oversee it, its overall strength was still shocking. This was its deep foundation. The 4-star examiner looked at the magicians who were cultivating with envy, then quickened his pace and brought Ji Dong to the inside of the hall. They entered a tunnel that was also paved with green bricks, and very quickly they came to a room that was closer to the inside. The room didn't have a door, it could be directly folded in. Inside was a room about 20 square meters, a table, a bed, and a chair. There were only these 3 simple pieces of furniture, and the magician called Shi Luo from before was sitting on that chair, his eyes calm, as if he had already forgotten what had happened before. Vice President Shi Luo, I have brought the person. The 4-star examiner said respectfully. Shi Luo smiled slightly and said, discovering a talent is meritorious. I will allow you to cultivate on the 3rd floor for 10 days as a reward. Go. The 4-star examiner was overjoyed, hurriedly thanked Shi Luo, and impatiently turned to leave. Ji Dong's gaze very naturally met Shi Luo's. Their eyes met, but what Ji Dong saw was a gentle and tolerant aura. It was also pressure, but what Shi Luo emitted was a kind of pressure that made people feel extremely comfortable, like bathing in the spring breeze, easily making him have a good impression of this old man. Shi Luo was dressed in white. His beard and hair were all white, and his face was full of wrinkles. He looked at least over 80 years old, his face ruddy, his spirit hale and hearty, and his eyes were still as clear as a youth. Young man, welcome to the Magician Guild. Shi Luo stood up, and Hyoheim stretched out her right hand. Ji Dong shook his hand and said, You're welcome. I wonder what the vice president wants to see me for? Shi Luo sighed and said, You saw what happened just now. The Magic Skills Guild is pressuring people everywhere, and its president Shui Yuntian is the God Empress, the 9-crown supreme. They must have full confidence in the 1-month battle. Each side will send out 10 people. I hope you can represent the guild to fight. Me? Ji Dong was shocked. He didn't expect that just after meeting, Shi Luo would entrust such a heavy task to him, and said, Vice President Shi Luo, you're not trying to find a doctor when you're sick, are you? I'm just a level 61 magician, and just now in the hall on the third floor, I saw more than 10 7 crowns and above magicians. Why did you choose me?" Shi Luo smiled slightly and said, "Because you're stronger than them, that's why I chose you. You're called Jidong, right? Heavenly STEM Academy, Yinyang Hall number 49. You once killed Ji Feng of the Central Plains Empire, killing him in one move. For your safety, His Majesty Yin Zhaoyang and His Majesty Tai Yin Zhaorong personally came to the Central Plains city, threatening the Central Plains imperial family with a massacre, for your safety. That day, I was also invited by the Central Plains imperial family, and was among the group of magicians, and saw the powerful aura of the two majesties with my own eyes. Although 5 years have passed, and your appearance has changed a lot, and your bearing has become more solemn, I've carefully inquired about you after the incident, and learned that you're a unique yin-yang dual fire magician. You can change everything else, but your attribute will not change. I really can't find a second person with the same attribute as you, am I right?" Looking at Shi Luo's sparkling eyes, Ji Dong smiled indifferently and said, "I'm afraid it's not your original intention to invite me, but to invite my master's wife and grandmaster to come out of seclusion." Shi Luo shook his head and said, "No, you're wrong, I'm inviting you, not the two majesties. Although the two majesties have a good relationship with my magician guild, they're not in my guild, and I don't have the face to invite them. I want to invite you, even though your magic power is only at level 61, I firmly believe that you will bring victory to the guild." Ji Dong looked at Shi Luo and said, "Just because I'm the disciple of the two majesties, you have so much confidence in me? Just because I just joined the Magician Guild, you asked me to participate in this challenge?" Chapter 210. Shi Luo shook his head again. "It's not a request, it's a request, an invitation on behalf of the guild. A 4-star badge isn't suitable for you in the first place. I don't even need to evaluate you, I can help you change it to an 8-star badge, because I know another thing. 4 years ago, in the battle between Saint and Evil, the number of enemies killed was Thunder Emperor Fury. Everyone's attention was also on Thunder Emperor Fury. The Heavenly STEM Academy even deliberately blocked the news. But there's no such thing as a secret in this world. I know that in this battle between Saint and Evil, there was a strong person on our side who used a super ultimate skill, allowing our side to obtain a decisive victory. The number of enemies killed was also second only to Thunder Emperor. This person is you, Tyrant Ji Dong, and at that time, your magic power shouldn't have broken through 5 crowns. 4 years have passed, I'm really looking forward to seeing how strong you've become with 6 crowns. Ji Dong smiled indifferently. Vice President Shi Luo, I can't help but admire your source of information, being able to guess that it's me from a small clue, but this doesn't mean that I have to work for the Magician Association. Even though I beat up the people from the Magic Skills Association, they can't stop me if I want to leave here. Speaking of which, it's funny, actually I came to the Magician Association to get a 4-star badge, just to conveniently sell a few crystal cores for some gold coins. I don't like to beat around the bush. What right do you have to make me work for the Magician Association? You and I both know the dangers of this battle." Vice President Shi Luo laughed bitterly. "That's why I said, this is just a request. If you agree, I can make the decision and give you a green brick." Hearing Shi Luo's words, Ji Dong couldn't help but be moved. "Give me a green brick?" "Yes," Shi Luo said seriously. "When you came in just now, you should have felt that the 3rd floor of the Magician Association is different from the outside world. If you really cultivate here, you will feel it even more clearly. Cultivating here will definitely yield twice the result with half the effort. The reason is that in the 3rd floor, there are 365 green bricks left behind by senior expert. There are more than 10,000 green bricks used to repair the 3rd floor, and among them, 365 contain the powder of the Heaven Jade. You are the disciple of the two majesties, so you should naturally know the name of the Heaven Jade. It is also known as the Divine Stone of Creation. It contains the aura of chaos and the power of creation of chaos. To any cultivator, it is indescribably beneficial. As long as you carry one of these green bricks with you, no matter where you cultivate, you will be able to achieve the effect of cultivating here by placing it below you. At this point, Shiluo couldn't help but reveal a fearless smile on his face. However, his smile soon froze, because he didn't see the shock he imagined from Jidong's face. The young man in front of him was still indifferent, as if he didn't care about the green brick with the jade of heaven powder. In reality, that was the case. Jidong was definitely interested in the jade of heaven, but it had to be a whole piece of jade of heaven. Last time, a piece of jade of heaven helped him ignite his chaotic flame, greatly improving his strength, and gave him the extremely domineering deity strike. However, the chaotic chi here was too weak, and a bit of chaotic flame emitted by Jidong was much denser than the chaotic chi here. From this, it could be seen that the jade of heaven contained in the 365 green bricks might not be more than the one he absorbed before. How much jade of heaven could be in a green brick? For his current soul fire, the benefits were too little, so how could he be tempted? Shiluo looked at Jidong's expression and couldn't help but say, "Don't tell me you don't know the use of the jade of heaven?" Jidong said, "Of course I do, but the jade of heaven in a green brick is too little. Although the jade of heaven is a natural treasure, and even a connate treasure, it doesn't have much meaning to me. Why don't you exchange it for something else? Maybe I'll consider it." He had a good impression of the Wizard Union, and he had never been afraid of actual combat. In a battle between two special rank guilds, the other side would naturally send out experts. Facing experts would undoubtedly greatly enhance his combat ability. Ever since leaving the core world, Jidong had never fought with his full strength. He also yearned for such a battle. Shiluo looked at Jidong as if he was looking at a monster. If it wasn't for the two majesties, he wouldn't have been willing to take out the Chaos Green Brick as a reward. He didn't expect the other party to refuse. With a bitter smile on his face, Shiluo said, "Since that's the case, how about this? If you're willing to fight for the guild, I'll make the decision to let you choose any item from the guild's treasure vault. How about that?" "Treasure vault?" Jidong thought for a while and said, "All right, it's a deal." His answer was very straightforward. Shiluo thought that he would bargain for a while, but he agreed just like that. In fact, a moment before Jidong agreed, he thought of the Flaming Bar's voice in his heart. The Flaming Bar only said 3 words, "Agree." Why would Jidong doubt the Flaming Bar at all? Only then did he agree immediately. The smile on Shiluo's face became much more sincere. Not to mention anything else, Jidong was willing to fight for the Magic Guild. It would be best if he won. If he lost or was hurt by the people from the Magic Skills Guild, would the 2 Fire Supremes let the Magic Skills Guild off? Moreover, Shiluo didn't think that there was anything better than 365 Chaos Green Bricks in the treasure vault. Choosing only one was completely within the range of what he could accept. Jidong said, "I'll meet you again in a month. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave." Shiluo personally sent Jidong to the door and handed him a badge with 8 stars shining on it. He said, "Take this. I believe that this is your true strength. With it, you can get a 40% discount on anything you buy on the 2nd floor, excluding selling items." One had to know that the badge on Shiluo's chest was only an 8-star badge. Jidong didn't stand on ceremony. He took the badge and turned to leave. Watching him leave, Shiluo muttered to himself, "Although it's impossible to attract the 2 majesties with him, it would be good if we could attract the Thunder Emperor. We would have a higher chance of winning." The Thunder Emperor is the youngest director of the Heavenly Deity Academy. Jidong once again passed by the area with the primal Chaos Green Brick. With a slight thought, the spirit fire in his body began to circulate under his deliberate control. His eyes suddenly had an additional layer of sparkling luster. As he swept his gaze across the area, he immediately saw the location of the 365 green bricks that emitted the primal chaos aura. Just as he had predicted, the amount of heaven jade in each brick was pitifully small. It would be good if he could absorb all of them. However, if that was the case, the Magic Masters Guild would probably go crazy. After leaving the third floor, Ji-dong directly arrived at the second floor of the Magic Masters Guild. There were a total of 6 passages and 7 rows of shop. As soon as he entered, he could immediately feel the dense mana fluctuations. Some were strong, some were weak, and all sorts of elements were present. It was obviously the aura emitted by various types of mana weapons. Ji-dong walked leisurely. The soul fire flickered in the depths of his eyes, allowing him to clearly see every trace of mana fluctuations here. As long as he swept a glance at any mana item, he would immediately be able to tell the quality of it. As expected of the Magic Masters Guild, there were really a lot of good things here. Ji-dong even saw a few mana weapons whose quality was not inferior to his twin radiants of Sun and Moon gloves and Demon Lord Yin-yang armor. However, these things were not what he could use, and the price was also shocking. A cosmic heart-protecting mirror that was equivalent to the Demon Lord Yin-yang armor was actually sold for 57th rank crystal cores. Don't think that it was worthless without money. A 7th rank crystal core was already a sky-high price. It was worth at least 100,000 gold coins. 57th rank crystal cores, if measured by gold coins, would be equivalent to 5 million gold coins. What a terrifying number! After a simple walk, Ji-dong understood those magic masters who specialized in hunting magical beasts more and more. In the world of magic masters, it was impossible to not have money. At the same time, in the world of magic masters, crystal cores could be used as currency to circulate. Only with enough crystal cores could one exchange for a suitable mana weapon. Without a doubt, he was very lucky. With the love of Zhu Yan's elder brother, Grandmaster, and Grandmaster's wife, he could easily have a mana weapon that belonged to him. Ji-dong found the biggest shop and walked in. This shop was at least 200 square meters. In the second floor of the Magic Masters Guild, where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold, such an area was already very rich and overbearing. As soon as he entered the door, a young magic master immediately came to greet him. There was a 3-star insignia of the Magic Masters Guild on his chest. When he saw Ji-dong, he was very polite and said, "Respected Mr. Magic Master, is there anything you need?" Of course. His gaze also lingered on the 4-star insignia on Ji-dong's chest for a moment. Ji-dong said, "Do you accept crystal cores here?" The young man laughed and said, "Of course we do. It's not just us. Every shop here accepts crystal children, and the price is absolutely fair. You can compare the goods with other shops. If the price we offer is lower than others, then I'm willing to pay 10 times the price." Ji-dong walked to the front of the counter and raised his hand. Immediately, 10 third-grade crystal cores and 10 fourth-grade crystal cores appeared on the counter. They shone brightly, and the mana fluctuations were very obvious. The young man was not surprised, but his gaze did not stop on the crystal cores. Instead, he looked at the vermilion bird bracelet on Ji-dong's hand that was overflowing with colorful lights and ripples of phoenix light. He said, "Respected Mr. Magic Master, are you selling this bracelet? I'm willing to buy it for 10 7th-grade crystal cores." Ji-dong laughed and said, "You really are a profiteer. Is my bracelet only worth 10 7th-grade crystal cores? If it's a 9th-grade crystal core, maybe I'll consider it." The young man's expression revealed a trace of embarrassment and said, "Sorry, maybe I didn't see it clearly. If you really want to sell it, we can discuss it." Ji-dong shook his head and said, "No need. This is a gift from a friend. I won't sell it." This vermilion bird bracelet was formed by the vermilion bird's divine power. Its value was hard to estimate. Not only could it be used for storage, but it also had an amplifying effect on fire-type mana. In addition to its gorgeous appearance and unique aura of the vermilion bird, How could a 7th grade crystal core be able to measure it? Although Ji-dong had casually offered a price of 10 Tier 9 crystal nuclei, it was indeed quite reasonable. The young man said with some regret, "If you plan to sell it in the future, you must come to me. I'll take all your crystal cores. 3 3rd-grade crystal cores are 500 gold coins each, and 4 4th-grade crystal cores are 1,000 gold coins each." Ji-dong glanced at him and said, "Take a closer look." The young man was stunned for a moment. He casually picked up a crystal core. The moment the crystal core touched his hand, his entire body trembled. His eyes revealed a light of shock and he said, "This is Supreme 3rd grade? Could it be, could it be?" Ji-dong smiled indifferently, "Don't worry about it. You're right, these are dropped by the magical beasts of the Holy Evil Island. The price shouldn't be as high as you just said." The young man was filled with respect. "I'm sorry, Mr. Demon Master. I was careless. Please wait a moment, I'll ask my teacher to come out and discuss with you personally." With that, he immediately ran out of the shop. It seemed like he wasn't afraid that Ji-dong would steal his things. Ji-dong naturally wouldn't just wait. His eyes swept through the various items in the shop. Soon, his eyes were attracted by an area on the side. The items in this area didn't have any magical fluctuations, but the prices were not inferior to magical weapons. This was because they were ancient sheepskin books. Some of them were written in the common language of the continent, while others were written in the same ancient language as the scroll book that Shi Shaoxi gave to Ji-dong. Aside from the books, there were more than 10 magic skill scrolls on display. These scrolls looked a bit broken, but one could still feel the magical fluctuations from them. As for the scrolls, Ji-dong was not interested. He was about to try making his own demonic wine. Once he succeeded, he would become a subversive existence. However, he was very interested in those ancient sheepskin books. Some of these ancient books recorded demonic skills, and they were all existences of the sure kill level. Some of them recorded some cultivation experiences, such as the notes of a demonic master. These notes recorded the author's lifetime of cultivation experiences, and were not inferior to a teacher's. How precious were they! Unfortunately, among the notes, the best one was only written by an 8-crown devil master, and there was no work by a supreme being. Ji-dong's own teacher was an 8-crown powerhouse, and his grandmaster and mistress were even more supreme beings, so these notes were naturally not of much use to him. As for those devil skills, he did not think too much about them, as he already knew quite a lot of devil skills, and he had not trained them to their peak yet. However, his eyes were still attracted by a book. It was a sheepskin book with a price as high as the notes of an 8-crown demon master. It was written in the common language of the continent, and the words "Divine Art Fusion" were written at the top. Ji-dong carefully flipped a page and read the content. He was shocked. Just as he was about to continue flipping, an old voice came from behind him. "You can only try to read one page of the book." Chapter 211. Ji-dong was flipping through the book called Divine Art Fusion when he heard an old voice coming from behind him. When he turned around, he saw the youth from before and an old man walking in together. Ji-dong's memory was extremely good. He immediately recognized that this old man was one of the few cultivators that he couldn't see through in the 3rd floor of the Devil Master Union, an 8-crown Devil Master. The 8-star insignia on the old man's chest also showed his identity. Ji-dong said, "I want to buy this book. Can you let me read a few more pages? At most 3 pages will do." The old man glanced at the 20 cores on the table, nodded his head and said, "It seems that you have been to the Saint Evil battlefield before, otherwise you wouldn't be able to take out so many cores of the same level. Those who have been to the Saint Evil battlefield are all heroes among us Devil Masters. I'll let you read 3 more pages." "Many thanks." Ji-dong immediately turned around. He couldn't wait to open the book and continue reading. In the process of reading, his eyes constantly emitted a bright light. His eyes revealed an unconcealable joy. After flipping 2 pages, Ji Dong closed the book solemnly and said, "I'll buy this book." The old man was slightly startled. He obviously didn't think that Ji Dong would make a decision so quickly. It must be known that the price of this book could be said to be the most expensive item in his shop. He had also read it in detail, but it gave him a feeling that it was extremely useless. It was only because of some of its characteristics that he purposely marked the price high. It was mostly used to decorate the shop. He didn't intend to sell it. "You've seen the price, 10 rank 8 core crystals. I can give you double the price of ordinary core crystals. 10 rank 3 core crystals are 10 rank 4 core crystals for 10 rank 4 core crystals for 40 rank 4 core crystals for a total of 50,000 gold coins. The price of rank 8 core crystals ranges from 300,000 to 500,000 gold coins, depending on the quality. It would be best if you have a core crystal, but if you don't, I'll give you a discount for 10 rank 8 core crystals, just 4 million gold coins." Listening to the old man's words, Ji Dong couldn't help but frown. A book selling for 4 million gold coins, this was definitely an exorbitant price. He could naturally see that this book was not very useful to ordinary devil masters. Its true value was at most 100,000 gold coins. However, if this book were to fall into his hands, the effect it would produce would not be comparable to 4 million gold coins. The most valuable item on Ji Dong's body should be the dual attribute 9th rank core, dropped by the Thistle Lightning Fire Dragon. Although this core could not compare to the Thunder Divine Axe that Fury had obtained, it could definitely match the value of a 10th rank core. A mutated dual attribute 9th rank core that was also obtained from the Holy Evil Island, its value could be imagined. However, this core was also of great significance to Ji Dong. It was crucial for him to study the fire and thunder combination technique. He was really reluctant to take it out. Seeing that Ji Dong was in deep thought, the old man smiled and said, "I'm afraid I won't be able to sell this book for a while. You can go back and raise the money, I'll keep it for you." Ji Dong looked up at him, waved his right hand, and a ball of red light burst out from the vermilion bird bracelet. When he opened his hand again, there was already an item in his palm. It was a crystal that looked like a miniature yin-yang crown. It was pure white, but it emitted an extremely sharp aura. The crystal was surrounded by a layer of black light. If one looked closely, they could see that there were at least 6 crowns on the crown of the crown. "I don't have money, I'll use this to exchange. What do you think?" Ji Dong stared at the 8-star powerhouse from the Devil Master Union in front of him. Seeing the item in Ji Dong's hand, the old man's expression changed. He almost lost his voice and exclaimed, 6 crown dark gung metal crystal crown? This. It was no wonder that he would be like this. Although the value of the crystal core was high, if compared to the crystal crown, it was like heaven and earth. If it was a light crystal crown, then it wouldn't be of much use to the Devil Master of the 5 Elements continent, but the dark crystal crown was different. Due to the harmony of light and darkness, such a crystal crown could be directly absorbed by the Devil Master of the same attribute in the 5 Elements continent. The huge amount of magic contained in it was enough to have an immediate effect. This crystal crown in Ji Dong's hand could completely help a gung metal attribute Devil Master under 7 crowns to break through any bottleneck below 7 crowns. The most precious thing was that this crystal crown wouldn't shatter because of the exhaustion of energy. It could still absorb magic from the outside world to replenish itself, and could be used for a long time. Just this crystal crown of the 6th order was already comparable to a magical beast's crystal core. Ji Dong's judgment was very accurate. For the old man in front of him, perhaps the 6-crown crystal crown wouldn't be very useful, but the young man who had spoken to him before looked at least 60% similar to this old man. They should be a pair of grandfather and grandson, and the aura they emitted belonged to the gung metal attribute. Therefore, the value of his crystal crown would naturally be greatly increased in the eyes of these two. If he could have it, this young man's future path of cultivation would be much smoother. The old man slowly raised his head, staring at Ji Dong with a burning gaze. good eyesight. Of course, Ji Dong knew that the old man was praising him for being able to see through the grandfather and grandson's attributes. He calmly said, I understand the value of this book, and the price you've asked for is already very high. I think this crystal crown should be enough to exchange for it. If you agree, we can immediately exchange. Of course, you will have to pay me in cash for the crystal cores from before. Who would have thought that after hearing his words, the old man would actually shake his head and say, No, this crystal crown of yours is indeed very valuable, but if I were to appraise it, it would at most be 1.5 million to 2 million gold coins. The difference from 4 million gold coins is too great. If you have another one, I can consider exchanging it with you. Ji Dong's gaze became a bit colder, and he said, Old mister, a man who is never content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Is this enough? A light flashed, and a ball of light flashed. The old man's hands were not like his age, and he almost caught the thing that Ji Dong had thrown over with lightning speed. This time, his expression became even more serious. What appeared in his hand was the emblem that President Shiluo had given to Ji Dong. The emblem was carved out of a red diamond, and there were 8 shining stars on it. It was exactly the same as the 8-star emblem on the old man's chest. 8 stars? The young man cried out in surprise. Where did you get the 8-star emblem? In the entire 10 headquarters, there are no more than 20 people who have this emblem. Ji Dong said indifferently, I just got it not long ago. I heard that with this thing you can get a 40% discount. Old mister, can you sell the book to me now? The young man's gaze was fixed on the 8-star coordinates in the old man's hand, and he murmured, This must be fake. How old are you? How can you have the strength of an 8-star expert? No. The old man threw the emblem back to Ji Dong and said, This is real, because he just came out of Vice President Shiluo's place. At this time, the old man's expression was no longer as calm as before, and he looked a little solemn. He originally thought that Ji Dong was the son of an aristocratic family, and that he was going to sell the book at a high price, but this emblem completely dispelled his idea. Offending an 8-star expert, especially such a young 8-star expert, was definitely an extremely unwise move. This book is sold to you, deal. As he said that, the old man took the 6-crown dark gunmetal crystal crown from Ji Dong's hand, and at the same time, took the book Divine Fusion from the shelf and handed it to Ji Dong. Grandson, take out 50,000 gold coins for this, mister. The young man was still a little confused, but he still did as he was told. He took a storage ring, and connected it with Ji Dong's vermilion bird bracelet, and the sound of gold coins colliding could be vaguely heard. After a while, the transaction of 50,000 gold coins was completed. The old man was very polite to Hyoheim and said, Please forgive me for offending you just now. If you come to our shop again in the future, we will receive you with a 50% discount. This business dispute could be said to have ended with both sides being happy. Although Ji Dong only paid a dark crystal crown, it was definitely a huge price. Of course, the old man and his grandson were satisfied, and Ji Dong himself was even more satisfied. To him, this divine fusion was already not something that could be measured with money, because as long as he learned it, it was equivalent to having a divine artifact. Until he walked out of the headquarters of the Magic Masters, the smile on Ji Dong's face did not disappear. Before going out, he declined the invitation of the guide girl, who was blushing, and once again walked on the 5th Earth Avenue. At this moment, the words Divine Fusion filled his mind. Although he only read the first few pages, he already had a basic understanding of this divine fusion. The reason why the divine fusion was so important to Ji Dong was that this skill was the use of mental strength. For ordinary magic masters, their own mental strength was used to activate and control magic skills, so how would they have extra mental strength to practice this skill? But for Ji Dong, who had the fire of the soul, this divine fusion was enough to become an existence that surpassed the super core killing skill. He had mental strength that was far beyond that of ordinary people, so he completely had extra mental strength to practice the divine fusion. The characteristic of the divine fusion, or rather, its function, was to fuse all magical items with one's body, turning one's body into a storage space. The advantage of such a skill for ordinary magic masters was that it would be easier for them to hide their magic weapons, and they would be able to equip their weapons faster when using them. It was the same for Ji-dong, but there was one thing that other magic masters did not have. The fire of the soul was a special flame produced by the fusion of Ji-dong's power of the soul and the flame of chaos. It was filled with creativity and Ji-dong's immense power of the soul. The flaming bar once told Ji-dong to carefully understand the creativity of chaos. If he could release his own fire of the soul one day, then he would be able to greatly enhance the various attributes of any magic weapons. How could it be easy to release the fire of the soul? That was something that Ji-dong would have to do after winning 9 championships. However, now that he had this divine fusion, everything had changed. The fire of the soul could not be released, but through the divine fusion, he could fuse all kinds of magic weapons from the outside world into his own body, directly touching the fire of the soul, and using the fire of the soul to nourish them. With the quality of Ji-dong's demon Lord Yin-yang armor, coupled with the nourishment of the fire of the soul, Ji-dong believed that it would definitely become a real substandard artifact. After a long time, it might even evolve into a divine artifact. How could he not be surprised to find such a skill? Without a divine artifact, he could make a divine artifact himself. Only then could the effect of the fire of the soul be fully manifested. The divine fusion, to him, could be regarded as the best skill to turn stone into gold. Ji-dong decided that after meeting up with the flaming bar tonight, he would study this skill as soon as possible and strive to master the divine fusion as soon as possible. He would first fuse his twin radiance of sun and moon gloves, vermilion bird bracelet, and demon Lord Yin-yang armor with himself. In the future, when he was in battle, he would be able to release them immediately and at the same time, constantly evolve them. Not to mention all of them evolving, even if one piece of equipment evolved, its value would not be comparable to a 6-crown crystal crown. Just when Ji-dong was filled with excitement, suddenly, his fire of the soul moved slightly. He subconsciously raised his head and looked forward. Not far in front of him stood a person, staring coldly at him. It was the brawny man who had caused trouble in the Magic Master Guild and had his arm shattered by Ji-dong's god-slaying strike. Seeing that Ji-dong had noticed him, he raised his other arm and pointed at Ji-dong. Then, he pointed at a dark alley at the side, turned around and walked in that direction. A hint of disdain appeared at the corner of Ji-dong's mouth. He didn't pay attention to the brawny man and continued walking forward. He directly passed through the 5th Earth Avenue and entered the 6th Earth Avenue. Not long after, an angry emotional fluctuation came from behind. The brawny man had already caught up. His voice was filled with anger and resentment. "Brat, are you afraid?" Ji-dong didn't even turn his head and said indifferently, "Are you worthy?" "You." With a flash, the brawny man had already blocked in front of Ji-dong. Speaking of which, his willpower was considered strong. Even though one of his arms had been shattered, he still dared to pester Ji-dong. At the same time, 2 powerful auras came from both sides of Ji-dong, forming a triangle with the brawny man in front of him. They sandwiched Ji-dong in the middle of the Earth Avenue. Ji-dong's expression didn't change. He said, "If you don't mind losing your other arm as well, you can continue blocking my path." The brawny man snorted angrily and said, "Brat, for offending our Magic Skill Guild, I will definitely make you suffer a fate worse than death. If you have the ability, follow us out of the city and we will settle this once and for all." Ji-dong curled his lips and said, "I don't have the time right now. If you are willing to wait, you can follow behind me. I will send you to your death after I'm done with my business." "You!" The brawny man was furious, but he didn't make a move in the end. The 5th Earth Avenue and the 6th Earth Avenue were the two most prosperous avenues in the Central Plains city. Chapter 212. The reason why the six-crowned burly man from the Magic Skills Guild didn't dare to make a move was because if he caused trouble here, even the Magic Skills Guild wouldn't be able to protect him. After all, the Central Plains Empire was the strongest country on the continent, and there was also a supreme expert, Heavenly Dipper Ji Chongshin, in charge. The Magic Skills Guild wouldn't offend the Central Plains Empire for a six-crowned devil master like him. The burly man had some misgivings, but Ji Dong had no misgivings. He stepped forward with his left foot and slapped his opponent with his right hand again. It was also a light palm strike. Seeing Ji Dong raise his hand to slap him again, the burly man acted as if he had seen a ghost. He leaped back without hesitation, and in the blink of an eye, he was already 10 meters away. Ji Dong waved his sleeves as if he was swatting a fly and strode forward with his head held high, proudly ignoring the three opponents surrounding him. The two powerful auras behind him moved at the same time. It was obvious that Ji Dong's actions had angered them. The left side was sharp and the right side was scorching. Two streams of air appeared at the same time. Ji Dong didn't need to use his eyes to see to feel that the two people had raised their hands at the same time and were grabbing at his waist. With Ji Dong's strength, how could he let them catch him? His footsteps suddenly changed. Including the burly man who was rapidly retreating, the three people from the Magic Skills Guild felt their vision blur. Ji Dong seemed to be still there, but the two people who were attacking from behind were all caught in the air. With a sweep of his elbows, an incomparably terrifying aura suddenly erupted from Ji Dong's body and blasted towards the two people at the same time. What made them even more terrified was that the powerful pressure emitted by Ji Dong's body was actually limited to them. It didn't affect any of the pedestrians around them at all. This control of his own aura caused them to turn pale with fright. Since the burly man dared to cause trouble for Ji Dong, he naturally had nothing to fear. This was because the two people he brought were both 7-crown Heavenly Master level powerhouses. They were also ranked high in the Magic Skill Guild. However, although the demonic power of the 7 crowns was strong, when they faced the aura of the ultimate dual flames that Ji Dong released without reservation, the elemental suppression appeared almost instantaneously. With Ji Dong's current strength, there were only two possibilities to not be suppressed by his elemental suppression. One was to reach the 9 crowns level and become a Supreme Master. Their strength would be far above Ji Dong's, and they would also possess the ultimate demonic power. The other was to be like the Heavenly Stem Saint and Ah Jin, who already possessed the ultimate demonic power. Only then would they not be suppressed by his ultimate demonic power. However, how many of these two situations would occur in this continent? The attribute suppression caused the two 7-crown Devil Masters to groan at the same time. The demonic power in their bodies flowed out. Although they both raised their hands to block Ji Dong's elbows, they groaned again. The Gung Metal Element Devil Master on the left was a little better. He was only knocked back 5 steps by Ji Dong's elbow. The blood in his body was surging, and he desperately urged the Gung Metal demonic power to resist Ji Dong's ultimate Yang fire. On the other side, Heavenly Master Bing Huo was miserable. The attribute suppression of the same attribute was always the most terrifying. Ji Dong's elbows were filled with the ultimate Yang fire. The flame of the same origin, the ultimate existence, in addition to Ji Dong's tyrannical self-created skill, the Fire Demon Devourer, almost in an instant, his defense was broken. Not only was his body pushed back, but his face became blood-red. With a cry, he spat out a mouthful of blood and turned into a ball of fire in the air, causing the passers-by to turn pale with fright. If it was a real battle, it would take some effort for Ji Dong to defeat these two 7-crown level Devil Masters. But now, on the street, they did not dare to use their devil skills, and they could not fully release their demonic power. In addition, Ji Dong's attribute suppression came suddenly, and they immediately suffered a great loss. Ji Dong acted as if nothing had happened. He flicked his sleeves and continued to walk forward. Only his voice remained in the ears of the 3 devil masters of the Devil Skill Guild at the same time. The 7 crown won't do, call the 8 crown, there's still hope. The 6 crown burly man watched dumbfounded as Ji Dong walked past him, but he did not dare to stop him. He had seen what happened to his 2 7 crown companions, so how could he dare to stop Ji Dong? Although he wanted revenge, compared to an arm, his life was obviously more important. Ji Dong did not care about the 3 people's obstruction at all. Soon, he found his second destination of the day. In the distance, the tall courtyard wall was already in sight. The courtyard wall was at least 3 feet tall, like a small city wall. The wall was completely golden, and the glazed tiles on it reflected a 7-colored radiance under the sunlight. Even the walls of the imperial palace of the Central Plains could not compare. On the wall there was a sentry every 3 steps, and a sentry every 5 steps. They were all patrolling soldiers in full armor. The black armor exuded a steady and heavy aura, giving people a sense of oppression. The lofty gatehouse was over 50 feet tall, and on both sides of the gatehouse stood 10 fully armored warriors, guarding the place. The gate was wide open, but one could only see the tall screen wall, which was engraved with totems of the 5th earth and 6th earth element. Above the gate tower there were 4 dazzling golden words. It was the Prince Equivalent's residence. The imperial palace of the Central Plains Empire was on the 5th Earth Avenue, while the Prince Equivalent's residence was located on the 6th Earth Avenue. If one was a foreign visitor and did not know, it would be easy to confuse the two. Because in all aspects, the Prince Equivalent's residence was not inferior to the imperial palace. Ji Dong strode toward the gate tower of the Prince Equivalent's residence. This was his second destination of the day. Before he could get close, 2 black iron spears that were as thick as an infant's arm appeared in front of him, blocking his way. "What are you doing? Can't you see that this is the Prince Equivalent's residence? Move further away," a soldier in full armor shouted angrily. A sharp aura enveloped Ji Dong's entire body. It seemed as if he moved rashly, the 2 black iron spears would leave 2 holes in his body. Ji Dong did not plan to clash with them. He stopped and said, "I'm here to find someone. Call Ji Dong out. Tell him that Ji Dong is here to visit." Although Ji Dong's clothes were ordinary, just by standing there, he had a kind of intimidating aura. Especially when they heard that his surname was Ji, the 2 warriors didn't dare to be negligent and retracted their spears at the same time. The warrior who spoke before said in a deep voice, "Please wait here for a moment." After saying that, he directly ran towards the gate. Not long after, the black-armored soldier came out and said, "I've already informed the internal affairs. Please wait a moment." Ji Dong nodded silently. He was not in a hurry. The sun was only halfway up in Guangzhou, and there was still some distance to go before it reached the center of the sky. Although there had been some twists and turns today, everything had gone smoothly. He had come to find Ji Yesheng so that Ji Yesheng could take him to his mother-in-law's grave. He did not know where the grave was, so he could only ask this cheap big brother for guidance. Ji Dong did not have to wait for long. After a while, he heard footsteps coming from the Prince of Equality's residence, and there seemed to be some chaos. Inside the gatehouse, a person walked out from behind the screen wall and strode out of the gatehouse. His appearance immediately shocked everyone, including Ji Dong. Prince of Equality, 9,000 years old. All the black-armored soldiers knelt on the ground in unison, kneeling on both knees. Only the spears in their hands were still upright. From their movements it could be seen that these soldiers had gone through long periods of training, and they all had the bloody aura of battle. It was not just the soldiers in front of the gate tower who knelt. Even the patrolling soldiers on the courtyard walls knelt on the ground. For a moment, the loud cries attracted the attention of passers-by on the main road. Then, aside from Ji Dong, the passers-by also knelt in this direction and shouted, "Prince of Equality, 9,000 years old." That's right, the person who had appeared in front of the Prince of Equality's residence and walked out of the gate tower was the current Prince of Equality, Ji Yunxing, whose status and power were not inferior to the Emperor of the Middle-earth Empire. The first time Ji Dong saw Ji Yunxing, it was when the siblings Yin Zhaoyang and Yin Zhaorong were intimidating the Middle-earth Empire. At that time, Prince of Equality, Ji Yunxing, was one of the 4 heavyweights representing the Middle-earth Empire. He stood together with Emperor Ji Yunlu, Dean of the Heavenly STEM Academy, Ji Mingxian, and Big Dipper Ji Chongxin. His status was illustrious. At that time, Ji Dong had only taken a quick glance at Ji Yunxing, but the feeling that Ji Yunxing gave him could only be described as profound. Now that he saw Ji Yunxing again, he looked like he was in his 50s, but his actual age was already over 70. There were a few streaks of white at his temples. When he saw Ji Dong outside the gate, this powerful Prince of Equality could not help but reveal an agitated expression. Pursing his lips slightly, Ji Yunxing took a deep breath. Hyoheim said, "Come with me." With that, she turned and walked into the Prince of Equality's residence. Ji Dong frowned slightly, but he still followed. Since he was already here, he might as well take things as they came. Although he did not expect to see this grandfather, since he had already seen him, he would not choose to escape. Only when Ji Dong also walked into the Prince of Equality's residence did the group of soldiers slowly rise to their feet. For a moment they looked at each other. However, they were well trained and naturally would not say anything. However, it was different for the ordinary commoners. They stood not far from the Prince of Equality's residence and discussed spiritedly. Naturally, the most discussed topic was Ji Dong's identity. How many people in the world could make the Prince of Equality personally come out to welcome him? Especially in the Middle-earth Empire, even if the Emperor personally came, he might not be able to achieve this. After walking into the Prince of Equality's residence, Ji Dong immediately felt his eyes widen. There was no scene of flowers or decorations in the Prince of Equality's residence. There were only tall and majestic buildings. All the plants in the residence were trees, and they were all towering trees. From the looks of it, even the smallest one was over 100 years old. These large trees added to the dignified atmosphere of the Prince of Equality's residence. The Prince of Equality, Ji Yunxing, walked at the front with a majestic gait, while Ji Dong followed behind him. Everywhere they passed, all the soldiers in the prince's mansion knelt on the ground. Ji Dong was shocked to discover that he did not see a single servant in the prince's mansion. All he saw were warriors in armor, and there were even quite a few of them who emitted magical ripples. It could be said that the Prince of Equality was completely different from what Ji Dong had imagined. There was not the slightest bit of extravagance and debauchery. On the contrary, everything he saw was filled with an iron-blooded elegance. It was as if he was on the battlefield and the marshal's residence after the army had set up camp. Seeing this, Ji Dong couldn't help but nod inwardly. It was indeed unusual for the Prince of Equality to be able to stand up to the current royal family. Ji Yesheng had previously said that he had been adopted into the royal family and had become the new crown prince. In the future, the Prince of Equality's authority in the entire empire would probably be even greater. Ji Yunxing's pace was neither fast nor slow. He walked in front and after a while, they passed through 2 courtyards and arrived at the main hall. The main hall was very spacious. On both sides were 2 rows of large chairs made of redwood. In the main seat at the front, there was only one large chair made of sandalwood. Upon entering, the first thing that Ji Dong felt was an austere atmosphere. There was none of the grandeur and luxury that a prince's residence should have. This was the main hall? With the Prince of Equality's status, shouldn't he at least have a small palace? Everything was shockingly simple. It was even more simple than any of the nobles that Ji Dong had seen before. This Prince of Equality's residence could only be described as austere. Now, Ji Dong was beginning to understand why his father in this world was so fed up with life in the Prince of Equality's residence. Living in a place like this was extremely dry and dull. At the same time, he had to shoulder such a heavy mission and pressure. How could someone who was not mentally strong possibly endure it? The Prince of Equality, Ji Yunxing, walked into the main hall and stopped. He did not walk to the innermost chair made of sandalwood. Instead, he walked to the center of the main hall and slowly turned around. Ji Dong also stopped 5 meters away from him. He looked at his grandfather, who seemed to be filled with a profound aura. "You've come to find Yesheng?" Ji Yunxing's voice was somewhat low. Ji Dong nodded. He did not hide his purpose in coming here. He said, "I want to ask him to take me to pay respects to my parents." Ji Yunxing's eyes flashed and he said, "You've thought it through?" Ji Dong frowned slightly and said, "Please don't misunderstand. As a son, it is natural for me to pay respects to my parents. Apart from this, I have no other purpose. I am your grandfather." Ji Yunxing's voice suddenly grew louder, and his beard and hair stood on end. An extremely sharp aura suddenly burst forth from his body. It was not just the pressure emitted by demonic power, but also the majesty of an emperor. This pressure was much more powerful and vast than the murderous aura that Ajin had given Ji Dong yesterday. At this moment, Ji Yunxing gave him the feeling that in this world, he was the ruler of the world. Ji Dong did not speak. He only looked at Ji Yunxing quietly. The monstrous pressure automatically dissipated when it reached him. It had no effect on him at all. Indistinctly, 2 illusory figures that were also filled with the aura of an emperor slowly appeared behind him. He did not retaliate, but at this moment, the proud will emitted from his body forcefully broke through Ji Yunxing's emperor's deterrence. The Flame Tyrant and the Dark Flame Devil King were also sovereigns. How could the pressure released by Ji Yunxing affect Ji Dong? Chapter 213. In the face of Ji Yunxing's questioning and powerful pressure, Ji Dong sighed and said, "Your Highness the Prince of Equality, aren't you tired of living? Is power really worth longing for? The previous princes of equality have probably lived to old age like you, which is why the Prince of Equality's residence has such an atmosphere today. Everyone only has one life. Have you ever asked yourself if you were happy in this life?" This was the second time that Ji Yunxing had met Ji Dong. The first time was just a quick glance. Ji Dong's pride, coldness, and even hatred were deeply imprinted in his heart. When they met again, he had thought of many possible answers that Ji Dong might give, such as hatred, disdain for the title of Prince of Equality, unwillingness to forgive him. He had thought of all sorts of scenarios, but he had never imagined that Ji Dong would actually use such a calm tone to ask him this question with a hint of pity. Ji Yunxing's ruler's aura froze slightly, and in the next moment, it quietly shattered. Ji Yunxing said coldly, "Do you know the word responsibility? Being born into a royal family is in itself a tragedy. However, since you are born into such a family, you must shoulder this responsibility. Your father is a coward. He does not dare to shoulder the responsibility that he should. You are right, I have never known what happiness is. I have lived a very tiring life. However, do you think that the descendants of the Prince of Equality live for the sake of power? To dominate the power of the Central Plains Empire? If you think so, then I can proudly tell you that you are wrong." He continued, "Our ancestor, the first Prince of Equality, together with the current royal family, founded the Central Plains Empire and conquered the most fertile land. The existence of our Prince of Equality only has one purpose, and that is to maintain the stability of the empire, to benefit the people, and to protect our country from foreign invasions. Outsiders may think that the word equality, as the Prince of Equality, means that he is equal to the emperor, but our word equality actually means that we hope that there will be no more classes in the empire, that everyone will be equal, and that the commoners will live and work in peace and contentment. Our ancestors, every Prince of Equality, also strived in this direction. There are no aristocrats in our Prince of Equality's fief. Every Prince of Equality must personally cultivate the land for a month every year. That's right, I have never known what happiness is, and I don't have the time to be happy. I shoulder the responsibility, and the meaning of my life is this responsibility. Your happiness belongs to you alone, but my responsibility, although it deprives me of my happiness, will bring happiness to even more people. Do you understand? I shoulder the responsibility, and the meaning of my life is this responsibility. Your happiness belongs to you alone, while my responsibility, although it deprives me of my happiness, will bring happiness to even more people. Do you understand? Upon hearing the Prince of Equality's words, Ji Dong's heart was filled with shock. Indeed, there was only shock. Looking at Ji Yunxing, he was speechless for a long time. The grandfather and grandson's gazes met and collided in the air. For the first time, Ji Dong felt ashamed. He had the flame of the soul. Through the flame of the soul, he could clearly feel that Ji Yunxing's impassioned voice, which was like the clanging of metal, had come from the bottom of his heart. Ji Yunxing's eyes shone brightly as he shouted passionately, "Why aren't you speaking? What else do you want to ask me? Say it all at once." "That's right, your father died because of me. I was the one who sent people to kill your mother. You can treat me as your enemy, but there's one thing you can't refute. That is, the blood of the Prince Equivalent's Ji family flows in your body." With a clang, Ji Yunxing flipped his wrist and a dagger about 1 foot and 2 inches long appeared in his hand. With a flash of light, the dagger flew straight at Hyoheim. Ji Dong subconsciously raised his hand to catch the dagger. He looked at Hyoheim Yunxing with a puzzled expression. Ji Yunxing took 2 steps forward to stand in front of Ji Dong. Ji Yunxing arrived in front of Ji Dong in just 2 steps. He grabbed the front of his robe with both hands and suddenly pulled it apart, revealing his muscular chest. He said, "I killed your parents. I am the murderer of your father and mother. Come, use the dagger in your hand to kill me and avenge them. As long as you agree to one condition of mine, I will not fight back, and no one will make things difficult for you." It was an accident, an absolute accident. Ji Dong had never imagined that he would encounter such a fiery scene as soon as he met Ji Yunxing. Ji Yunxing did not give him a chance to catch his breath. At this moment, he was completely overwhelmed by Ji Yunxing in terms of aura and could no longer stand up to him like before. This was the difference in righteousness. Ji Yunxing's heart was clear and he was righteous. Every word he said was spoken with a clear conscience. When he tore open his robe, his aura had already reached its peak. Looking at the gleaming dagger in his hand and then at Ji Yunxing, Ji Dong finally spoke, "You are right. My father was indeed a coward, an irresponsible coward. He did not dare to bear such a heavy responsibility, so he chose to leave. His body, hair, and skin were inherited by his parents. Not to mention the fact that you did not intend to kill him. Even if you did kill him with your own hands, I would not say anything. I cannot say anything because my father's life was given by you, just like my life was given by my father." "I understand what you mean. Ji Yeshang has inherited the imperial family and inherited the bloodline of the imperial family of the Central Empire, but the bloodline of the Prince of Equality has no successor. You hope that I will inherit the bloodline of the Prince of Equality, but I cannot agree to this because I do not have righteousness in my heart. True equality is not something that the Prince of Equality can achieve. Otherwise, why would the bloodline of the Prince of Equality, which has been passed down for so many years, only be able to spread the rule of the nobility in his own territory? As long as the Prince of Equality exists, there will be no true equality in the Central Empire. Unless there comes a day when the country no longer has any nobility or imperial family, and all the decisions of the country are decided by the people, elected by the people, and governed by the will of the people. This is true equality. Tell me, if I inherit the throne of the Prince of Equality, will I be able to achieve all this?" Ji Yunxing's eyes revealed a trace of astonishment. Of course, He didn't know that what Ji Dong said was the situation of his previous life. He said, "No, even if you become the Prince of Equality, you won't be able to achieve all this, because the empire needs stability. The nobility has long taken root in the empire, and a slight change can affect the overall situation. More commoners will suffer in the war. Although our central empire seems powerful, we are surrounded by neighboring countries. Once there is internal strife, I'm afraid that vile people will take advantage of it." Ji Dong smiled calmly and said, "Since that's the case, the title of the Prince of Equality is even more meaningless to me. I'll have Ji Yesheng tell you that I don't hate you. In the matter of my parents, no one is right or wrong. It's just a matter of looking at it from different angles. However, the ending is still a tragedy. My father didn't listen to your will and inherited this responsibility, but as his son, I have to listen to my father's dying wish and maintain my freedom. I won't be involved in the responsibility of the Prince of Equality." As he spoke, Ji Dong suddenly took a step back and knelt before Hyoheim. Bang bang bang. He kowtowed 9 times to Ji Yunxing. "Grandfather, I'm kowtowing to you on behalf of my father. I hope you can forgive his actions. You're right. No matter what, the blood of the Prince of Equality runs through my veins. I can promise you that if the Prince of Equality's bloodline really runs into trouble in the future, I definitely won't stand by and do nothing." At this moment, a deep voice suddenly rang out from all directions. "Since that's the case, then all the more reason for you to stay and accept this responsibility, because the Prince of Equality's bloodline has already run into trouble. Without an heir, how will the Prince of Equality's bloodline pass on? Can you tell me?" Hearing this voice, the agitated emotions on Ji Yunxing's face immediately turned into respect. He stepped to the side. Ji Dong only saw a yellow flash of light, and there was already another person in the main hall. It was a middle-aged man dressed in yellow. Seeing this person, Ji Dong couldn't help but be shocked. This yellow-clothed middle-aged man was the guardian of the Central Earth Empire, as well as the only supreme expert of the Central Earth Empire, His Holiness the Big Dipper, Ji Chongxin. At the same time, he was also the most senior member of the Prince of Equality's generation, Ji Yunxing's grandfather, and Ji Dong's ancestor. His Holiness the Big Dipper. Ji Dong bowed slightly. "You should call me ancestor. I didn't think that our Prince of Equality's bloodline would produce a genius like you in your generation. I originally thought that Yifeng and Yishu were pretty good geniuses, but compared to you, they are far too lacking. If it weren't for the fact that our family is so small, your grandfather and I wouldn't force you. After all, I don't want to see the siblings Yinyang and Zhaoyang come to the Central Plains city again to ask for people. If you can't convince me today, even if I have to tie you up, I will make you stay in the family. Even if the siblings Yinyang and Zhaoyang come again, I have the confidence to make you stay and not be taken away by them. You have 30 minutes to convince me." If it was said that Ji Dong's aura could stand up to Ji Yunxing's, then the moment Ji Chongxin appeared, he lost all ability to resist. A supreme expert was in existence on a completely different level. Reaching the 9 crowns, having all 9 crowns, entering the Great Perfection realm, and possessing extreme demonic power, any supreme expert was in existence that could destroy the heavens and the earth. This was something that Ji Dong was very clear about. If Ji Chongxin insisted on making him stay, he wouldn't have the slightest chance of leaving. After persuading a supreme expert, Ji Dong couldn't help but smile bitterly. It seemed that coming to the Prince of Equality's residence today was a wrong decision. This was more like a trap that had been waiting for him for 4 years. Ji Chongxin was actually in the Prince of Equality's residence. Just this point was enough to explain many problems. Ji Chongxin looked at Ji Dong's fluctuating expression and smiled slightly. "I know what you're thinking, and I can give you a definite answer. That's right, after Fury, Night Sorrow, and the others returned from the sacred evil battlefield, I have been living in the Prince of Equality's residence. That is because we all guessed that you would come back to pay respects to your parents sooner or later. We just didn't expect that this wait would take 4 years. However, you didn't waste these 4 years at all. As long as you are willing, I believe that you will become the most powerful prince of equality since our ancestors. Child, stay. The responsibility of the family needs to continue, and it needs you to bear it. Ji Dong firmly shook his head. Ancestor Xian, I just said that I cannot go against my father's dying wish. Furthermore, I am not suitable to bear this responsibility. What I like is a free and unrestrained life, pursuing the realm of the strong. If you force me to stay, in the end I will only be a corpse. A light flashed in Ji Changxin's eyes. The air in the main hall instantly froze. Child, are you threatening me? Ji Dong was neither servile nor overbearing. I am just stating a fact. Ji Changxin unyieldingly said, What if I tell you that even if I have to leave behind a corpse, I will make you stay? Don't forget, Ji Feng died at your hands. If he hadn't died, Night Sorrow wouldn't have been adopted by the imperial family. You caused this disaster, so you should bear it yourself. Ji Dong suddenly smiled and said, Ancestor Xian, no matter how I look at it, you won't kill me. At most, you will put me under house arrest. Do you think that the Prince of Equality's residence can put me under house arrest? Unless you are by my side at every moment. I don't know how to convince you, but I can tell you that forcing me to stay will not benefit the Prince of Equality's bloodline. Why don't you let me be like you and become the protector of the Prince of Equality's bloodline? The Prince of Equality's inheritance rights won't necessarily be a problem. Ji Night Sorrow can also have children, and he can adopt the Prince of Equality's bloodline. Why must I bear this responsibility? Ji Zhangxin furrowed his brows and said, Looks like it's hard to convince you. You're right, I won't kill you. I'll put you under house arrest. Although I'm old, I'm patient. Come, let me see what Brother Chaoyang has taught you in these 4 years. Wait a moment, I will help him convince you. Just as Ji Changxin raised his hand and was about to grab Hyoheim, the space suddenly split open. A thick ball of red quietly spread, turning into flower petals that bloomed. Red dress and red hair, the flawless flaming bar appeared without warning in the main hall of the Prince of Equality's residence. Seeing her, Ji Yunxing couldn't help but shout angrily, Who are you? As he spoke, he was about to activate his demonic technique. However, Ji Changxin's expression suddenly changed. He moved to the side and stood in front of Ji Yunxing, saying, Yunxing, stop. Don't be rash. Ji Yunxing's cultivation level was 8 crowns, so he couldn't sense too many things. However, he was a genuine Supreme Being expert. The moment the flaming bar appeared, he could sense too many things. That was why this celestial Dipper Highness had such a strong look of disbelief in his eyes. Seeing the flaming bar, Ji Dong immediately became nervous. The flaming bar couldn't use its demonic power to face a Supreme Being expert. It was too dangerous. He took a step forward and was already beside the flaming bar, wanting to stand in front of her. The flaming bar grabbed Ji Dong's hand and smiled at him, shaking her head. Don't worry, nothing will happen. Chapter 214. The flaming bar pulled Ji Dong's hand. At this moment, Ji Zhangxin and Ji Yunxing finally saw the flaming bar's appearance clearly. Even though they were both kings of equality, and Ji Zhangxin was a celestial Dipper realm expert, they could not suppress the shock in their hearts when they saw the flaming bar clearly. Their gazes were slightly dull. The flaming bar's perfection was not only in appearance and figure, but also in that impeccable temperament. Holiness, nobility, profoundness, and majesty. Even as kings of equality, they had a feeling of looking up to him. Especially when they realized that when the flaming bar appeared, Ji Dong's indifferent composure was nowhere to be seen. In his eyes, there was only a strong sense of warmth and some worry. No matter where, as long as the flaming bar appeared with his original appearance, he would immediately become the focus of attention. This time was no exception. Ji Zhangxin's gaze quickly returned to normal. as a sovereign, his ability to control himself was still very strong. His gaze swept across the flaming bar, and he was shocked to find that the woman in front of him gave him a feeling that he could not see through her. Especially the way she appeared just now, it was like the legendary instantaneous transmission. "Who are you?" Ji Zhongxin asked in a low voice. The flaming bar smiled indifferently and said, "I am Ji Dong's girlfriend. I can represent him to convince you that Ji Dong cannot stay here as king of equality. The reason is actually very simple, because he is different from you. 9 crowns is not his limit." "What did you say?" Ji Zhongxin was shocked. Behind him, Ji Yunxing's expression also changed greatly. Although the flaming bar's words were simple, this sentence of 9 crowns was a huge shock to the 2 generations of kings of equality. All along, in the world of yin and yang magician, the 9-crowned sovereign was the goal that all magicians strived for. If 9 crowns was not the limit, then what was the limit? Flaming Bar smiled indifferently. 9 crowns is the limit that you humans have reached. I'm sure you all know how the evil island was formed. It was done by the first generation of heavenly stem saint. However, do you think that 20 people with 9 crowns could create the evil island, which is equivalent to a province of your empire? There was also the wind and waves on the sea, the huge horde of demonic sea beasts, and the myriad lightning calamity that enveloped the entire holy evil island. Were all these things that a 9-crown demon master could do? Even if they used the fusion of 10 types of mana, they still wouldn't be able to leave behind such a miracle. There's only one reason why this happened. It's because the first generation of holy disciples all broke through the restraints of the 9 crowns and reached another realm, the saint rank. Listening to the Flaming Bar's words, Ji Yunxing couldn't help but feel a little confused. However, Ji Zhongxin's breathing clearly became heavier. Staring at the Flaming Bar, he almost couldn't wait to ask, "Do the legendary saint rank really exist?" Raging Flame slowly nodded her head and said, "Of course it exists. However, there are no saint-level experts on your continent right now. Only the 5 great holy beasts that rule the entire holy evil island are saint-level experts. If it weren't for their existence, would your 2 continents have been separated for so long? Whether it's the holy evil scale, the myriad lightning calamity, or the holy evil passage, all of these are supported by the power of the 5 great holy beasts. The first generation of heavenly stem saints created the holy evil island and attracted the myriad lightning calamity. These are all very important. However, more importantly, they summon the mounts of the 5 elemental gods from the divine realm, the 5 great holy beasts. That's why the light and darkness continents have been in peace for so many years. The reason why the battle between the holy evil and the holy evil exists is not to let your 2 continents compete in strength. Its real purpose is to train the young experts of your 2 continents so that they can obtain the opportunity to break through to the saint rank. I'm afraid you don't know this. Even the previous generations of heavenly stem saints are not very clear about this. Ji Zhongxin listened attentively. Ji Yunxing couldn't help but ask, "Then according to what you said, Ji Dong has the possibility to break through to the saint rank?" Flaming Bar nodded. Yes, the saint rank is also known as the demigod rank. Its special characteristic is the possession of the chaotic force. Only with the creative chaotic force can one have the possibility to break through to the saint rank. You guys don't have this, but Ji Dong does. Furthermore, he not only possesses the origin of chaos, but also his own chaotic flame. His future is not something you can imagine. Limiting him to becoming the equal king will only hinder his breakthrough to the saint rank. Moreover, the saint rank is still not his limit. If the saint rank is not the limit, then what is it? This time, it was Ji Dong himself who asked the question. Flaming Bar had never told him about this. When he heard the Flaming Bar say that he could break through to the saint rank, his heart burned with passion. The saint rank not only represented strength, but also a longer lifespan. With a longer lifespan, he would naturally be able to spend more time with the flaming bar. What could make him more excited than this? The flaming bar smiled faintly and said, "I've just said that the 5 great sacred beasts are only the mounts of the 5 elemental gods. They are only at the saint rank, a demigod, and not a true god. Above the saint rank is naturally the divine rank. If we use your human demon master ranking to measure it, then level 99 is a saint, and level 100 is a god. The difference of one level is like the distance between heaven and earth. When you can break through level 100 and become a god, then your lifespan will also become incomparably long. You can even leave this world at any time and reach the true divine realm." The flaming bar's words only brought shock to Ji Zhangxin and Ji Yunxing, especially to Ji Zhangxin. He was a revered martial artist, but for many years, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens for his cultivation to improve. Even as a revered martial artist, he did not dare to confirm if there was an existence that surpassed the revered martial artist. The flaming bar's words were like a beacon for him. What surprised him even more was that he actually did not have the slightest bit of doubt in what the flaming bar had said. Ji Dong is your descendant. If you wish for your descendant to become a saint rank, or even a divine rank, then don't force him to do anything. Only by continuously experiencing and honing himself can he truly improve. Are you satisfied with my explanation? Ji Zhangxin and Ji Yunxing looked at each other. With their grandfather around, Ji Yunxing naturally would not say much. After Ji Zhangxin thought for a moment, Hyoheim moved and said, "Let me see your flame of chaos." Ji Dong slowly raised his hands. Thick black and white flames rose from his palms at almost the same time. Instantly, the entire hall was filled with thick fire element. The powerful elemental suppression brought about by the extreme yang flame and the extreme yin flame affected even Ji Yunxing, who was at the 8 Crowns realm. Sensing the aura emanating from Ji Dong's body, Ji Yunxing was shocked to realize that if his grandfather had not been here, he would not have been able to keep this grandson here on his own. Black and white light condensed behind Ji Dong's back as the Taiji yin-yang fish slowly appeared, spiraling in front of Ji Dong. At this moment, Ji Dong's eyes had completely turned a crystalline white. His eyes lit up, and a wisp of white flame rose from the center of the Taiji yin-yang fish, rising more than a foot into the air. The moment this white flame appeared, all the fire elemental essence in the hall disappeared. Not only that, a thick wave of essence chi broke through the hall and shot into the sky. Ji Dong's entire body was like a piece of glass jade, becoming crystal clear. The thick essence in the air was like an endless mouth, frantically absorbing all kinds of magical elements in the air. The chaotic energy that was fair, peaceful, vast, and as vast as smoke completely enveloped Ji Changxin and Ji Yunxing within it. That was not pressure, nor did it have any destructive power. There was only endless creation. Ji Zhangxin clearly felt that his magical power, which had been stagnant for many years, seemed to have been touched. He faintly felt that he had advanced a step further. That wonderful and mysterious chaotic chi filled him with desire. Ji Yunxing felt it even more clearly. The magical power in his body began to circulate uncontrollably on its own, frantically and greedily absorbing the pure magical power brought by the chaotic chi. Ji Yunxing had been to the 3rd floor of the headquarters of the magicians that had 365 chaotic green brick. However, compared to that place, the chaotic elements in this hall were at least 100 times denser. If he trained in this environment, Ji Yunxing was sure that he would have the chance to break through to the 9 Crown Supremes in less than 10 years. At the same time, in the Central Plain City, all the magicians above the 8 Crown Supremes raised their heads to look at the sky. Although they could not see anything in the sky, the extremely dense and vast chaotic chi that was filled with the aura of creation made everyone unwilling to let it go. Igniting the chaotic chi was the dream of all magicians. They were gazing deeply at the chaotic chi, comprehending all kinds of feelings brought about by the chaotic chi. In the headquarters of the magicians, an old man in a black robe, who looked to be about 30 years old, stood on the roof. He looked at the direction where the chaotic chi was coming from. He could not help but reveal a trace of astonishment on his face. He said, "Prince Equivalent's residence, Ji Zhangxin, don't tell me you have already comprehended the mysteries of the chaotic chi? I have racked my brains to get the 365 chaotic green bricks from the headquarters, but you are still ahead of me." The principal of the Heavenly STEM Academy, the chief director, Ji Mingxian, stood on the field of the academy and looked at the sky. At this moment, his face was ashen and extremely ugly. He said, "Big brother, oh big brother, you have finally comprehended the mysteries of the chaotic chi? Looks like the bloodline of the royal family is really going to be replaced by the bloodline of the Prince Equivalent. Why is it that you are always ahead of me? You have already comprehended the chaotic chi, but I have yet to reach the 9th crown." The chaotic chi slowly disappeared. The Central Plains city was still the most prosperous city in the continent, as if nothing had happened. The yin-yang fish in front of Ji Dong had already disappeared. His face was a little pale. Even though he had already comprehended the fire of soul, releasing the chaotic chi without holding back like this still made him extremely tired. Moreover, he could only release the chaotic chi. He could not control the chaotic chi and make it his own battle strength. That was something that could only be achieved after reaching the 9th crown. Flaming Bar looked at Ji Changxin and said indifferently, "The chaotic chi is the key to unlock all bottleneck. With the chaotic chi, as long as he accumulates enough, Ji Dong can break through all the barriers step by step and become a true saint. I don't think I need to say anything else. I hope that you can also comprehend the mysteries of the saint level. Ji Dong, let's go." Ji Changxin and Ji Yunxing did not stop them. They even made way for them. Ji Dong had already used his ability to prove that he had the ability to reach the saint level. Compared to becoming a saint-level expert, what was the throne of the Prince Equivalent? Once Ji Dong successfully broke through to the saint level, then the bloodline of the Prince Equivalent would not only be the Prince Equivalent of the Central Plains Empire, but also the Prince Equivalent of the entire continent. Ji Dong was in no hurry to leave. He looked at Hyoheim Yunxing and said, "Grandfather, before I leave, I want to pay my respects to my parents and do what I should do as a son." Ji Yunxing nodded and said in a deep voice, "I'll take you there right now. Although you're unwilling to acknowledge your ancestors and remain in the Prince Equivalent's residence, from now on, you are a part of the Prince Equivalent's residence. The bloodline of the Prince Equivalent will support you unreservedly. No matter what you need, as long as it is within our ability, we will definitely support you." As the Prince Equivalent, Ji Yunxing was extremely experienced. After sensing the presence of the chaotic chi from Ji Dong, he made a prompt decision and immediately made the decision to fully support him. Whether or not Ji Dong could become a saint-level expert was no longer a matter that concerned him alone. It was also related to the glory of the Prince Equivalent's clan. After hearing Ji Yunxing's words, Ji Dong could not help but be moved. If he had the support of the Prince Equivalent, the migration of the Forest Demon tribe would be a smooth process. As long as they entered the borders of the Central Plains Empire, there would not be any problems. Ji Zhangxin did not follow them. The Flaming Bar had also returned to the core of the earth. Ji Zhangxin and Ji Yunxing did not ask much about her mysterious teleportation ability. Under Ji Yunxing's lead, Ji Dong followed him to the backyard of the Prince Equivalent's residence. Although there were no beautiful plants here, there was a small, isolated courtyard. Ji Yunxing told Ji Dong that this was the place where the previous Prince Equivalent would meditate. The courtyard was not flat, but there was a small hill. This was where Ji Dong's parents were buried. The grave was not extravagant. There were only the words, "Descendants of the Ji clan and wives," carved on the tombstone. For some reason, perhaps due to the influence of this body, Ji Dong's eyes unconsciously moistened when he saw the tombstone. With a thud, he knelt before the tombstone. He heavily kowtowed 3 times. Father, Mother, your child is well. Rest in peace. As he knelt there, Ji Dong did not move. His tears flowed uncontrollably. In his mind, memories of his childhood kept appearing. Compared to his parents, wasn't the original Ji Dong even more unfortunate? His parents had at least loved him, but what about him? If Li Thing's soul had not come to this world and attached itself to his body, he would have long ceased to exist. He knelt for a whole 2 hours. Rather than saying he was paying his respects, it was more like Ji Dong was bidding farewell to his past.